Ankh Ujasanev, Nubians. Hello, hello, everyone. Hello, hello.
Johnson, indeed, indeed.
Uh,
Life and health, life,
I,
prosperity, and health. It's good to see you. Hey,
good to
how
see
you doing, bro?
you. Good to be seen. No, I was just, basking in the conversation we had before. I clicked go live, about the changes that have happened in my life because of the presence of you in my life. And I was like, that's the goal, to run into somebody that can shift you in such a way so that you can change, so that you can be changed, so you can change the what needs to be changed, So
I know that's right. Well, I feel the same way about you. In fact, it's interesting because those folks who are not yet in Nubia and not yet in narrative. We're undertaking beginning Monday a month-long conversation with and listening to Octavia Butler. Thank you for that, by the way, Prof, because it sent me back to her. And remarkable sister. But she talks about change being God being change. And I think that may have been one of the first things you said to me when she whispered in your ear and said, come over here and sit with me for a little while. So I thought about that in the context of our goal. What are we after? And you and you added that seventh, which is really the framing question from our sister Sonia Sanchez, how do it free us, to that Africana Studies conceptual category framework. And it sent me back 20 some years to when we started Philadelphia Freedom Schools. And we used to always say, when we were in community with these young people and these teachers and parents and community folk, our goal is to get rid of freedom. Meaning what? No, this shouldn't be freedom school. This should just be school. This is what should we be doing. And so what you stepping in as you did and willing and then working incessantly to create this space, and then in the middle of a pandemic when we're not going back. That's why I love that hashtag. I love that phrase, Nubia, the new normal. As people, are not going back to these buildings or not going back to these places. And I was all around DC yesterday. I was in and out of the Martin Luther King Library, some other places, and looking at those huge steel and glass towers with dark windows. Yes, it was a Friday, but that ain't it, because also on Tuesday those windows are dark. And did you see Elon Musk threaten his whole work staff? I was sitting somewhere drinking some coffee. I busted out. Oh, here it is. This was was it yesterday? Thursday. No, come on back. I ain't gonna be. He said, pretend to work somewhere else. Musk warns Tesla office shy staff. Elon
from
Musk.
from his home, he sent that, right?
Come on now. I was
He's
watching you and Drew
from,
talking
from
about.
a beach or something.
Did
Yeah.
y'all talk about this? Because I was watching you and Drew talking about Drew McCaskill talking about profit and building institutions for one or other purpose, including life purpose. I'm wondering if this came into
That was a precursor to that conversation. That was,
the.
yeah. But that's why, when people clip dive on YouTube, it's like, and they think they know the show. I watched some clips. It's like, no, there's a developing conversation. And here's a 9-minute or a 10-minute or 12-minute. You might get 20. Here's a clip from a larger conversation from a 3-hour show that's Monday through Friday for the last almost 8 years. So it's interesting, and it's just like reading. You flip through the middle to a book and you don't understand. You can go to the end of the book. You can understand some things, but the development of a story, you got to be there for the beginning, the middle, and the end. And I think too many of us skim. We skim through life. We skim through the paper. We skim. That's why. Oh, the media's got us twisted, because the clickbait headlines and you can skim through. You read a headline, you think you know the story.
That's right.
Sometimes the headline has nothing to do with the story. But
Nothing.
and even in digesting people, watching clips on YouTube is not, you ain't getting the full story of what this is, which is why, we put the clips to bring you in.
And in our case, and this is what I love with I was talking with Sunyata a couple of weeks ago. It was over at
Calabash.
Calabash. Yes, in fact, I'm tripping because you know what I got in my mug? Some of that Octavia Butler that she done conjured. But and
Talking to Liz about seeing if we can get some sort of glass mug with Nubia on it or narrative, because when you put that Octavia Butler in and you add a little something,
you saw it. She sent you the joint, right? And you put the lemon.
And that's alchemy right there. That's
playing.
That's black magic.
I kid her. I walked there one day. I was like, "Where is the witch?" And then she was off. She's like, "Who is that called?" Oh, okay. Hey, what's going on? And she came out. But I mean, we could call it chemistry or alchemy, as you say. And when you put that lemon in there and that thing turned purple, like what? How did you even conjure? It's like George Washington Carver. I'm a scientist, but I went out there and the plants told me what they could do. I know what they could do. I talk to them all the time. But I'm raising it because though these points of entry, whether they be short, like those clips that you post on YouTube from 3-hour, 5-day-a-week conversations, or Sunyata inviting people in over to the other side, or even what we do here, which may be an hour and a half, 2 hours, 2.5 hours on Saturday, but yet really what we're doing in Nubia is where, and you're grateful, people are saying, oh wow, this is great, I'm learning so much. Yeah, but now, and coming up this month, starting Monday night is another example. We are going to walk line by line, and by line, we don't mean close read line by line. We mean as folks are reading and thinking, we're going to have a conversation with Octavia Butler, and we're not, and of course, numbers are important in context, but in the context of what we're doing, like what we're doing here, this is very important because we know we're reaching people beyond people's capacity to, but in that space that we are inviting people in, we're talking about not just hundreds now, we're going up in the thousands. And so when Baba Kwaku, Brother Larry and Mama Labisi joined us to close out Martin Delaney and Blake on Monday night on Memorial Day, that's a conversation that won't be had anywhere else in the world because it was a world conversation about not only a figure, but a text that can only be had in that place. And I guess what I'm raising is just to emphasize what you said, these hours that we spend together, including office hours on Monday nights, and then Tuesday with the Metanetra class with Dr. Beatty, and Saturdays and Sundays, really Sundays live with Dr.
We
Allen.
just started a money class on Thursday. Man,
Oh, we're just getting started. But what it does is stretching those hours are now part of a rhythm. And I know the effect it has had on me. I'm thinking again about Octavia Butler in Parable of the Sower, where she opens up with this concept.
From John Jennings, because I have, this is a beautiful, like, if you
have, you know what, I didn't even pull it, that one and Parable of the Sower and Kindred, and John Jennings is one of those people, man. We and see, that's Urias's world of all these crazy illustrators and artists, and it would be great to get John Jennings in for a conversation. Just looking at Black Comics, the piece that he and Damian Duffy, they had 2 volumes.
I have that up there somewhere as well. I mean, he said, actually, Dr. Nana Yao sent me a copy of it.
Oh yeah, Nana Yao,
yeah. But to Mama
mm-hmm.
She came in unexpected because we didn't expect it. This is the other thing, right? So it's not a book club. We're not going into what we're doing here, and this is how I've always imagined narrative, and now Nubia is, again, the building blocks, right? So we're having a conversation that puts context on what's happening now by reaching back, having the ancestors whisper in our ears about what is, and then bringing it forward so that we can build the future that will. So she, her framing of the school, and then bringing in the homeschool, the woman that has 6 kids who's homeschooling. And then I get a call yesterday from Laree Daniel Favors. She and Brian do a Saturday school that they've been doing for the last 26 weeks. And so we were talking because we're about to launch a young person's version of Nubia. And we've been talking about this for a while. And ironically is actually Laree's daughter's name, which is not a coincidence, I don't believe. But so they've been doing this work.
Not at all.
Ryan, and she was like, so I want to bring my brick. And so, like, okay, so we're gonna, develop that. But I was like, we got to get Mama obese. Come on.
No, Olabisi. Olabisi, yeah.
Olabisi. We got to get her and all of the people that are in Nubia already doing this, because as we send our babies out into this world to be miseducated and have their spirits destroyed with people, giving them monkey certificates.
Shout out. I love it. The Monkey Award for entertainment. You entertain me. And the young boy, you might want to spend a second telephone with, because somebody may have missed that.
Yeah, you sent it to me. I didn't see it. I'm so triggered and angry at everything right now.
I don't even get mad. The child didn't know. He was happy. He came home with that award in Mississippi, and he was happy. This is pre-K. And what killed me, Prof, was, I'll say what killed me. What I found fast, one of the many things I found fascinating is, apparently, according to the school administrators, they had a meeting before this teacher, this white woman teacher, went to the classroom about not giving out awards that could be seen as offensive. So this white lady gives this little black boy pre-K the monkey award. They're all animal things award. And then you see the certificate. We're not gonna call the little boy's name or his mama. No, it said the monkey award for being the most entertaining. Then she said, well, I didn't know monkeys was for metaphor for black people. I'll give her a pass. But you know why I give her a pass? Because I don't care. So, but you know what it did send me to? Oh no, I don't even think I probably didn't, because I ain't gonna talk about it. It sent me back to, anytime we start talking about teachers, I go back to the black schools. And we talked many times about Cleopatra Davenport Thompson, who was a professor at Jackson State, a lifelong educator in Mississippi, K-12 college level, brilliant sister who wrote the history of the Mississippi State Teachers Association. And it just reminds you that wouldn't have happened well, segregation was bad. Of course, segregation was bad. Anybody arguing segregation was good? But I tell you what, we have lost the capacity to teach our own informal education. That's, again, a children anchored iteration in Nubia follows in and is parallel to and benefits from the momentum of memory, from the momentum of somebody like Amama Olabisi, who has spent decades as an African-centered educator, who comes out of the African-centered movement. Her husband, Baba Kweku, or Larry Crow, who spent decades in African-centered education, the Institute for Positive Education in Chicago, Haki Mabuti, Safisha Mabuti, connected to those networks. When we saw that violence in Buffalo, and now the funerals are going on. And I'm glad that Al Sharpton called Kamala Harris to come up to did you see her remarks? She gave about maybe 3-minute remarks, but this is what I liked about it.
Uvalde or Buffalo?
In Buffalo. It was at one of the funerals. And, I hadn't seen it either. I tell you who called my attention to it was Roland. Warren, he said, did you see what Kamala Harris said? I said, no, I didn't see. So I went and looked, and I saw what he saw, and I think you would see the same thing. Because she was sitting there with the family in the front row, she didn't have a speech writer. She didn't have, and so when he called her, Reverend Shaw, you could tell she was kind of not mad, but like, I just came here to be, why you? And then she got up there and did.
Photo op. Why you going?
Yeah, why you call me? And what's so funny, because again, we talk about, that's why we had to have an Africana studies framework. Who are we to each other? If you don't have a sense of Africana language formations, those ways of knowing, you completely missed when she went up, shook his hand, turned to the podium and said, I ain't gonna say nothing about Reverend Sharpton this morning. And everybody started laughing. Now, if you don't speak the language, you don't understand, then she just egged him.
Right, you out of pocket for that.
Bro, why you say I just came in and sit with? But what came out of her mouth next, unscripted, no speech, was a little different Kamala Harris. I'm saying that if you talk like this all the time with these black people, in other words, you got home trained, what it, but nobody machined it, nobody saying, nobody worked, and you in a room full of different people, but these are black people, and they putting this elder in the ground, and you weren't prepared to say, you were sitting next to the sister, you could see her sitting there next to the elder, and so she was like, I really don't want to get up, but I'm gonna get up now, you done called me out, so if I'm up here, I don't have time to workshop how they're going to attack me at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue when I come back. I'm here. And it was a very different feeling. And I guess what I'm saying is that's what Nubia is. I mean, we are stepping out on imagination and memory. We're stepping out on our protocols. We're stepping out freely. As Langston Hughes might say, we're free within ourselves. And what it does is it's not excluding anyone, but the only way we'll make progress as a human family, and this comes through in Octavia Butler's work. And of course, August Wilson always says this, you got to speak out of your experience, your truth. And you can't do it quickly. It takes time.
Yes. You just said something that I hope maybe Vice President Harris is listening to, and maybe somebody that's close to her can get in her ear, because when she shows up as authentically herself and not worried about what the social structure is going to say, right, media is going to do, because that's probably why this didn't get a lot of wide coverage, because I didn't see it. It didn't come
interesting.
trending, right? Because
Right.
everybody wants to call her not really black and not really, sell out and all these other things, and she just does all of this stuff for attention. But you don't spend that much time at Howard and then AKA and all of these things and be your whole life black, no matter
Your mama taking you and your sister, your little sister, the Kwanzas in California in the late 60s,
right,
and everybody says it's not true. Y'all better do a little bit more research on that. But yeah, you don't do that and not get that protocol. That's right.
So here we are, and I'm grateful for this space, and I'm for what's to come with the young people, because beyond the safety issue, which we're going to get into today, safety, guns, and
No
things,
question.
you
No question.
know, what is being planted in at the youngest of ages will, that's no child should have to fight off, white centeredness their
That,
whole life to get to a place. I had a woman tell me, she's in her 60s and she's just now, and I was like, it doesn't matter. I'm just now coming into myself and being comfortable with myself. It doesn't matter what age you find freedom, as long as you find it. But that you had, 60 years on this earth and still didn't feel comfortable in your own skin. I had a guy in the comments say he was a DJ at a all white school or whatever, and he's playing the pop music for the kids, and then little girls come up, do you have any hip hop? Do you have any Jay-Z? Do you have any Beyonce? Do you have? And he says, okay. So he puts it on. Everybody comes on the floor. They know every word, all the cuss. Even though he played the clean version, and it clicked because he said, you were saying I centered them instead of doing what I do, but they are already,
they're already there.
we're the center. We're the center. They already are part of our culture because they can't.
Well,
It's
the we that they think we are.
right.
And I would be interested in seeing. I missed this story, but apparently Eric Adams was called himself trying to ban trap music, a drill music, which came out of Chicago, and then he had a meeting with some of the cats at the. I mean, there are many conversations going on here at the same time. You know what I'm saying? You can't. I mean, he sounds just like an old head. Look, that music is not the reason that we are attacking each other. However, it's not the reason that our violence has been enhanced. And you're right. These young people who are not of African descent, who want that's who they think we are. You know what I'm saying? And so young people say, well, that's our culture. They taking our culture. Really? That's your culture? Getting high, getting in the car, shooting at each other, and then making a song about it because you want to escape the ghetto, the hood. You escaping the hood. Monday night, when we get into the parable of the sower, and you see those 3 tiers, I mean, those tiers inhabit all of Octavia Butler's work. That top tier, and however, they're going to be psychics, they're going to be aliens, but there's going to be a hierarchy. At the top, these are the owners. In the middle, those are the people trying to protect and hold on to a little bit. And then the vast majority is just trying to survive. So we get to why you're trying to survive out of drill, but what you're doing to do it has been informed by them people at the top. This social structure is framed. I mean, Butler does that brilliantly, and she does it in Parable of the Sower. So if y'all listen to drill, you love drill, come on, read Parable of the Sower and see where it's going to end up. And you know what I'm saying? So I'm just saying that, so when them kids asked him to put that music on, I'm like, okay, Now, when the music stops, which of them 3 tiers do you go back to? Because I'm gonna tell you right now, if y'all don't think Donald Trump Jr. don't know all the words, of course he does. In fact, who was one of the biggest biggest white figures in hip hop prior to his politics? Donald Trump. Come on, did he? I mean, come on, y'all. I mean, y'all put Trump.
Did he?
Come on, you know what I'm saying? That's why when he started running, he invited all y'all to Trump Tower. You know what I'm saying? Because this whole notion of opulence is there. So I mean, it doesn't surprise me at all. But now that DJ to which, because I was watching, I don't know who it was, Math Hoffa and them. They was talking to, I don't know if it was what's the brother's name, the Afro Latino, not Envy, from back in the day, the DJ. I mean, back in the day, DJ. When we was coming up, the golden age of hip hop. There were so many of them. There was Clark Kent. There was
that's not.
Somebody put it in the chat. Anyway, they were talking. I don't even think he was in this segment, but they were talking about the fact that you can't ban music or culture production. People are expressing themselves. At the same time, the sources, the experiences out of which people express themselves can be changed and altered. And so, that's something we have to talk about.
All right. So DJ Red Alert, I don't think he's Hispanic. No, Kid Capri is.
Kid Capri.
Oh, that's what you're thinking? Because I don't think he was back in the day. Kid Capri's still around.
Kid Capri is still around, but I'm saying they all still around. They gotta make money. What else they gonna do? They DJs, right?
All right.
I mean, there was a time, right, where you had to go to the club. In fact, he was making that point. Interesting in talking about governance. He said, I travel back in the day. And so when I go to parties, I got to know what they like in Anchorage. I got to know what they like in Houston. I got to know what they like in Amsterdam. I got to know what they like, because now what you have is, because of the commercial nature of these kind of formations, they'll put a program together with 4 or 5 or 6 DJs and everybody playing the same music. And then people get bored. He said, but when you come to a convening, I'm calling it convening, you say a party or, a live party, there are going to be some staples that are dropped in there. And that's where we start talking about cultural meaning making, the difference between the cultural meaning making category and movement and memory, just in passing, I'm saying, because in cultural meaning making, you're going to play whatever is local in addition to whatever else is out there, because people want to hear their music wherever you see. That's why he said, DJs, y'all act like we don't study. I had to study. But in terms of movement and memory, how did or do we remember experiences? There are going to be certain things that are so powerful that they will move from cultural meaning making, which is whatever the music or the art or the culture is at the moment. They will move into a category that transcend that immediate moment and become staples in a deeper kind of cultural relationship. So all the DJs going to have flashlight in their repertoire. Why? Because George Clinton has moved from cultural meaning making to movement and memory. They're going to be certain, but everybody's going to have, depending on what mood you want to have, you want to slow it down, start slowing it down, then you're going to hear, whoa, whoa, dun, 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 dun. Hey, you make me happy. Yeah, you're going to have to play a little Frankie Beverly, right? I want to make sure I'm right before I let go. We Are One that you played for us now some time ago. There are going to be things like that. Anyway, I don't want to get too far into that. I'm just saying that, cultural meaning making isn't just about recognizing who we are in any particular moment. And again, Octavia Butler, bringing it back to her, and we'll talk about her in a minute. There we go, Parable of the Sower. Right. That's exactly right. We know that Butler makes the assertion that the only thing constant is change. If you want to talk about God, it's change. Go ahead, read it. Oh, please, go right ahead.
All that you touch, you change. All that you change, changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. And I want to also come over to another, because as people are digesting this, whether you're on YouTube and you're, just listening, and I just enjoy you, there is to me, an edict in being in a space like this, that you have to do something. And if it is changing you, then you need to not just change, but change the things around you. She also says a gift of God may sear unready fingers. A gift of God may sear. So that means that y'all got to get ready. And if you're not ready, be honest with yourself. Maybe you're not ready for this. It's okay. It's all right. But get ready, because your fingers will be burnt off handling something that's a gift from God that you're not ready for.
That's very much the truth. And in fact, I'm glad you did that, because we know, and for those, everyone, all our Nubians who are here now, we know that we're going to go from chapter 1 to chapter 15 Monday night, and then we'll finish the following Monday so we can get to parable of the talents, 2 of the projected 3. And someone last week made the observation that before she became an ancestor, and people say it was tragically short, she had a fall. Octavia Butler, born in 1947, Southern California. I thought about one of my best recent students, Sienna Ben, who's getting a PhD now back in her native California, from that community, from that neighborhood, Pasadena. That's Jack and Mac Robinson, and their mother moved them out there. That's Jackie Robinson territory. You start talking about Pasadena in 1947. Made transition in Seattle in 2006, where she had moved in the late 90s, 1999. By then, she was the famous Octavia Butler, but always famously kind of private person. But she had projected a 3rd volume. And I'm thinking now about somebody last week made the observation that our sister N.K. Jemisin, in many ways, another iteration and extension of that, fighting into the science fiction social structure publishing world, multiple award winner, Hugo Award winner, Nebula Award winner, the great N.K. Jemisin. Her father, I think they're from Alabama. I have his book around here somewhere. He's an artist, a visual artist. Was a visual artist. But anyway, she made the observation in her introduction. I think this was the 2019 edition of Parable of the Sower. Some of you all may have had, and shout out to everybody who is who, if you didn't have the book, are buying these books from our Black bookstores. Again, we made that point last week. I was texting with some folk at Sankofa. They're very happy to be happily overwhelmed with orders, and they getting them out. But in the 2019 edition of Parable of the Sower, N.K. Jemisin makes the observation that there was a third volume in this trilogy. So Parable of the Sower, Parable of the Talents, and then Parable of the Trickster. But of course, we didn't get Parable of the Trickster. And N.K. Jemisin says maybe that's better because it requires us to extend that. And it, of course, takes us back to the last
I love
that. But the parallels, the ancestors keep talking, because remember what Larry said on Monday night in Nubia. We closed out Blake, and I'm just holding up the Floyd Miller edition because I like the cover better. I like the Aaron Douglas joint. So anyway, the last line in Blake, because remember, we don't have the last few chapters of Blake. They were lost, or at least they've been not to date discovered in the newspaper, the Weekly Anglo-African, the Anglo-African Magazine. These are the two iterations of a Black-owned press and newspaper publication where Martin Delany published Blake as chapters in this newspaper. He never published it as one thing. And I thought about that in terms, well, anyway, I'll come back in a minute, because actually I'll make this connection between Martin Delany and Octavia Butler, between Blake and the Parable of the Sower, but also bringing N.K. Jemisin back in a second on another even more direct observation. But the last paragraph of Blake, or the Huts of America, which we talked about, and if you haven't read Blake, please, y'all should put that on your shelf. He says, this is when they're planning the rebellion. They're in Cuba. Right, because Henry Blake done been all over the world. He done been in Africa. He been all through the South. He done gone through the North. He's in the Caribbean. Now he's in Cuba. They're on the eve of this rebellion, worldwide rebellion. And he says, Montego, I thank God then that there's still some hope. My lot is cast with that of my race, whether for weal or woe, exclaimed Ambrosina, with brightened countenance, when Gondolier, rejoicing as he left the room to spread among the blacks an authentic statement of the outrage, quote, woe be unto those devils of whites, I say. And Larry was like, I don't know that we need what happened next, because it's almost like Delaney's like, nah, y'all don't need to read what I wrote next. What you need to do now is complete it, because I don't mean all white people. What he said, woe be unto those devils of whites. And there people we were in there Monday night laughing about that, because of course immediately we thought about Black Rob. That's woe. When you see something, that's woe. It ain't just W-O-E, it's W-H-O-A. And then I thought about Jay Dilla with F the Police. We don't say, he said, we don't say yeah, we say whoa. In other words, we don't hold back, we just let go. We don't say yeah, we just say whoa. After police. In other words, it does none of us any good as human beings in any society we inhabit in this world to hold our tongues in the face of injustice. So it's ironic that the last sentence of Martin Delany's Blake, which is a global conceptualization of Blackness resisting oppression, it's ironic that the last chapter we have is the last chapter we have ends with woe unto them that will try to continue this oppression. And so, I mean, and the only thing I was going to mention is actually, this is actually in let's go with Octavia Butler. And thank you, N.K. Jemisin, for making that observation about the third book that didn't get a chance to appear. And I know she's not the only one, but I'm not a. Let's go with Octavia Butler. This is a speech that Octavia Butler gave called The Lost Races of Science Fiction. This is 1980. It's republished in a book that Gary Kenovan did on Octavia Butler. And if you want to, I mean, there are several good books if you want to read about Octavia Butler, in addition to, you can go on YouTube or anywhere else and see her talking. Consuela Francis did an excellent one called Conversations with Octavia Butler, which is very good. And I'll tell you, though, at this moment, one of the ones that I really have enjoyed is by this sister Linnell George, this journalist. She did a book called A Handful of Earth, A Handful of Sky, The World of Octavia Butler. That's a great photograph on the front and a great piece of artwork. The thing I love the thing I love about Linnell George's, and you actually talked with her. I'm glad that you got a chance to talk with her. This is a sister. I think she wrote for the LA Times for a while. She went through the archive, and apparently, which gave me great comfort, personal comfort, Octavia Butler saved everything. Saved everything. So at the Huntington Library in California, there are at least 9,000, little over 9,000 individual pieces of Octavia Butler's things, notes, everything, little bills of sale. I mean, she kept everything, her little notebooks and report cards from when she was a child, in close to 400 boxes. And the finding aid alone to the Octavia Butler papers, the finding aid alone is 500 pages, just to what's in there in terms. So what Linnell George did over the course of years was go through the archive. And what you see in here, and I'll just give you a quick example. What you see is, like at the beginning of chapter 4, what would you do truly if you were not afraid? She's got an example, for example, of, bills, telephone bill. She said you can learn a lot from people. And I'll just go, this is one of her early journals that she put together. A pink notebook as a child. She had her pens in there, had a little ID. She had cut out a page, a picture from somebody who was in the movies and stuck it in here. This is what she wrote in. And so she goes through marginalia, what little Octavia Butler was writing, what her mama who would bring home things, including some of the early science fiction books, that she wrote something in one of them. She said, writing is a form of gambling. Still, they never told me not to write. And she goes on, and of course, her family called her Estelle because her mama name was Octavia, but Octavia E. Butler was the daughter's name, and they call her Estelle, in part to distinguish her from her mom. But anyway, Octavia Butler's, and I'll end with this and then come back right just on this moment, because we want to talk about this in the context of violence and what we've seen so far. Octavia Butler says this in this speech, this speech from 1980 called Lost Races of Science Fiction. She says, more important than technique, however, is for authors to remember that they are writing about people. That's what this book does. Linnell George's book does. A Handful of Earth, A Handful of Sky. It's not about her books. It's not about her. It's about her. It's about her process. It's about her becoming. It really is kind of, and what Linnell George does, I think, does a particularly good job of is she gets out of Octavia Butler's way, so you get the feeling that you're going through the papers. It's very effective, and it's written in a way, and you know how you journalists do, Prof. You write in a way that everybody can read it. Mm-hmm. A child can read this, and that's nothing I love about that book. I mean, I'm kind of suspicious when folk get so jargonesque that can't nobody read it. I'm like, what you hiding? You know what I'm saying? And Octavia Butler styles like that, but this is what she says. He says, more important than technique, however, is for authors to remember that they are writing about people. Authors who forget this, who do not relax and get comfortable with their racially different characters, can wind up creating unbelievable, self-consciously manipulated puppets. Pieces of furniture who exist within a story but contribute nothing to it. Or stereotypes guaranteed to be offensive. Now, Mark Delaney's not a novelist. He's writing Blake almost like a political tract. But one of the things that emerges in the novel Blake, which is why I think, for me anyway, it's the most important piece written by an African in the United States in the 19th century we have access to. There's nothing talk about, the slave narratives. Did you read Blake? No. Well, then you don't, come to me showing me all these slave narratives, because Martin Delany didn't write a slave narrative. Martin Delany wrote about who we are to each other. And even though the language can be difficult in moments and it isn't really a novelistic form, what does come through in Blake differently and a lot of these other things that are written during that period is the humanity of Black people, the arguments, the agreements, the passion, the feeling, and much of it, as we know and then learned again and learned even more from Baba Kwaku and Mama Olabisi on Monday night, much of it was based on Delaney's firsthand research. When he's writing about Africa, it's because he was there. Martin Delaney went to Africa in 1859 and spent a year sitting with Africans. So when he's writing about the enslavers and what they did, he is literally bringing back stories. He traveled through the South as an African who was not in chains, who was in Pennsylvania and Massachusetts, his mother had moved in from what is now West Virginia. He went into the South during enslavement and went from place to place listening. He had traveled all over. He knew the people, as Larry made the point Monday night, that he said Frederick Douglass knew the struggle. Frederick Douglass knew enslavement. Martin Delaney knew us. Martin Delaney knew the community. He lived in Canada. Remember, he hosted John Brown. So when you're reading Blake, you're reading people. Back to the end of this speech by Octavia Butler, she says there was a time when most of the few minority characters in science fiction fell into one of these categories. In other words, kind of political, racialized categories. People writing tracts. One of the first Black characters I ran across when I began reading science fiction in the 50s was a saintly old, quote unquote, uncle, end quote. I'm not being sarcastic here. The man was described as saintly and portrayed asking to be called uncle. Think about Song of the South. Zippity doo dah. Some of y'all watch that cartoon. Y'all know what it is. Or better yet, let's not even go back to the 50s and 60s. Let's come back to 2022. Insert your favorite, I don't know what you talking about, from Netflix or network television. Anyway, continue. Says, the man was described as saintly and portrayed asking to be called uncle, whom Harriet Beecher Stowe would have felt right at home with. I suspect that, like the Sidney Poitier movies of the 60s, Uncle was daring for his time. That didn't help me find him any more believable or feel any less pleased when he and his kind, Charlie Chan, Tonto, that little guy that swiped Fritos, were given decent burials. Times have changed, thank heavens. And science fiction has come a long way from Uncle. Clearly, though, it still has a long way to go. As I was reading that, you know what I thought about, Prav? When she said Harriet Beecher Stowe would feel at home, I just laughed. Why? That's why Delaney wrote Blake. Harriet Beecher Stowe had written Uncle Tom's Cabin. Delaney is like, cabins? Blake, or the Huts of America, a story of United States, Africa, the Caribbean. What are you talking? Oh, I'm sorry, Harriet. I ain't mad. You're writing to the social structure. Who are we to them? You try to engender sympathy. You are a friend of the Negro. I understand. An uncle for you. But for me, Martin Delaney wrote a letter to Freddie Douglass and said, hey, man, that's your friend, right? I'm putting it in our comment. He said, Harry Beecher Stowe, your friend, right? He said, yeah. He said, okay. Now, y'all, you know Josiah Henson is living in Canada in poverty. That's the dude whose real life story she took to make Uncle.
I thought it was Linda Brent.
No, Linda Brent comes later. Slave Girl.
Slave Girl narrative.
Slave Girl, right? No, Harriet Beecher Stowe.
I thought they talked. I thought she talked to Linda Brent.
Well, she absorbed. That's the thing. She absorbed from a lot of sources, but Josiah Henson's story. That's, in fact, during the period they called Josiah Henson the real Uncle Tom, and then later Harriet Beecher Stowe writes a novel called Dread, A Tale of the Great Dismal Swamp, where she starts, and then she writes another one. There's another one called The Keys to Uncle Tom's Cabin. I mean, I won't even go over there and try to find all that stuff. It's up there on the shelf. But I'm raising this because Delaney told Douglass, hey, more power to her. It may even help. But is she sending money to Josiah Henson? Because he should be able to tell his own story. At least he should get some money of it. Douglass ain't writing back. If I remember. But I'm saying here, Octavia Butler is saying, y'all seen that same uncle in the science fiction. Of course, he's dead now, but we still got work to do. And I'm thinking to myself, my God, one of the motivating factors for Martin Delaney writing Blake or the Huts of America, Uncle Tom's Cabin, shows up in a speech that Harriet Beecher Stowe said, yeah, that uncle, I seen that uncle. And you know what? Harriet Beecher Stowe be right at home. And I thought to myself, I don't know, Mama Butler. She might not have been right at home because Martin Delaney gathered her in the 1860s about that. So anyway, I mean, there are no mistakes. The ancestors don't make any mistakes, but let's think about this in terms of since we've been together last week. This is our regular Saturday convening, part of this larger universe of space. And one of the things that Linnell George chronicles beautifully, and one of the things I love about her book, A Handful of Earth. In fact, she takes the title of her book, A Handful of Earth, A Handful of Sky, from Octavia Butler, because that's what Octavia Butler said. In fact, let me just read the quote. It's from the first look. She got her little you see her this is a page from one of her calendars. This is from January 1983. Sunday the 9th, right. Says
I
shop
love
for food,
that.
1 hour. I'm telling you, this book is,
Hold the book
I'm
up
telling
again.
you.
Hold the book up again, Dr. Carr. Because
Yeah.
this, oh my God. And I can't wait for our t-shirt drop with her, because
Oh, yes.
art, that art is nice, but our art is even nicer. I mean, and we
Our
gotta
art is nice.
celebrate this beautiful woman.
No
Open
question.
that,
No
open
question.
that up, because I have a journal. You know, anybody that writes, you have to have a
I'm
schedule.
telling you,
That
you're
is so,
gonna feel like you write with her, Prof, because that's exactly. I'm sure your journal looks like this or something like it
well, it's just
every day.
my
Monday.
handwriting in the mess here.
No,
My
no,
hair.
no, no. I mean, that's your. I mean, this is it. And of course, you see her struggling to pay the bills. You never had no money. She's got documents in here from when her mama bought her typewriter. And the family was like, "What you getting that child a typewriter for? She don't need no typewriter." Look, when I tell you Octavia Butler saved everything, here go the box with the typewriter ribbon, and she done wrote on the box. I'm saying it. Here goes a little tab here where she says writing paper for early drafts and carbon, 3 packs of 300 sheets each. She taking notes, and she said, but here's what she said. It's where the title comes from. She writes this. This is what Octavia Butler says. What good is thinking and creating and imagining and getting off the beaten track, off the narrow footpaths of what everybody is saying or doing whoever everybody happens to be this year? Science fiction is a handful of earth and a handful of sky and everything around and in between.
Mm.
I mean, so when we think about what we're doing, I mean, that very deliberate naming you gave us of Nubia. And I love the fact people say, well, is it spelled Nubia? No, it's spelled Knubia. Is that K for Karen? No, the K is silent. Okay, well, what does the K mean? Well, the K is going to distinguish. It's going to be something new on something very, very old. I think about the motto of Black Classic Press, Paul Coates. He said a very new press with some very old ideas, right? And narrative is that K is silent. But remember, and everybody in the meta class knows this now because y'all know how to spell and write and know the glyphs behind and the concept behind Amun. One of the things the ancient Egyptians would say in prayer is that it is Amun, although unseen, who is the source of all life, power, and health. And when you say the K is silent, that's no different than I think about in Odu Ifa in the Yoruba. They always add a 1 to the constellation of, when we talked about this, when we talked about Black is King a long time ago, right? The constellation of, I'm not going to say gods, the constellation of spirits, the constellation of guiding forces, the constellation of Orisha. You add the 1, why? Because the thing over the set signifies the unseen thing, the one that animates all of it. Now, you may call that a European, Western epistemology or ways of knowing, again, simplifying. You might call it a baker's dozen. What's a baker's dozen? Well, a dozen is 12, right? Okay, you got the muffins, right? Well, there's a little left over. Okay, well, who does that go to? That goes to the one that made the 12. It's not extra, it is the thing itself. So I mean, so again, the K is silent. Yeah, the K is silent because it's animating the whole concept. But in Nubia, we think about, and in our formations, even folks who are not yet in that other space where we get deeper into this and really open up, because I'm really looking forward Monday night, as in every week, but especially now, to what people get, what we get, what folks got and get and thinking through with Parable of the Sower. It's so funny because she's only working. She said, I would rather have a part-time job where I could barely pay my bills if it gave me time to write than have a full-time job where I have more stuff, but I can't write, because the thing that is the most valuable in life is time. And so us convening, spending time, we talk about spending time. We've even commodified the concept of spending time. No, we experience time, but how you choose to experience time is a very important moment. And so again, this just in this, look at where she said, she says, right. And then she says shop for food. And then she says 1 hour each math and biology. She's studying on her own. Octavia Butler went to community college out in LA. She signed up for classes at Cal State LA. She did a couple of writers' workshops. Samuel Delaney, the science fiction writer, was in at one of the workshops teaching, but she didn't do a whole lot in the classroom, and she didn't do writers' workshops as such. She taught a few of them later on in life, but she was really about writing about her craft. Monday the 10th, up at 4:30, 1 hour review, half an hour each to math and biology. Tuesday the 11th, do homework for a week. And then look what she got. Finish it. You got to finish it, right? She says, goes on and says that this spot she's going to opens at noon. Wednesday, the 12th, up at 4:30. Thursday, probably work day. I mean, like going to work, having to pay that job. Thursday, the 13th, right, math bio. Friday, the 14th, right, math bio. Saturday, the 15th, right, math bio. In other words, she's scheduling this. And people say, oh, you got to schedule your life. You got to schedule. You got to make time for yourself. Octavia Butler was deadly serious about that. And it comes through in her craft. But let's talk about this question of violence. We've had another violent week, huh, Prof? It may seem like we're switching, but you know how we do. We're gonna bring it all in for Atlanta.
And yeah, I just bought the book while you
Oh,
were talking.
Yeah, I told people saying Kobe. I said, yeah, y'all got this right. She said, but people, the buyer said, yeah. I said, well, make sure y'all stock this up because again, Linnell George doesn't get in the way of Octavia, but she lets her stuff tell the story, and that's what makes it so beautiful. You know what I'm saying? It's almost anyway. I don't get too deep into it, but yeah, this week is
Iowa. Yeah.
And then Tulsa. You've been talking about Tulsa now for a couple of weeks, and the brother lost his life because this cat said his back still hurt.
Bought the gun. Black man bought the gun hours before, had back surgery, killed the doctor, and a bunch of other people and himself. Something. I reached out to Reverend Dr. Haynes.
Freddie Haynes, yes, my man, Brother Haynes.
I said, bro, can we do a Revelations lesson series? Because I feel like if we're gonna do Parable of the Sowers, Power of the Sower, Power of the Talent, if we're gonna do that, we also probably need to have a Christian religious study about Revelation. He said, well, I won't do it the way, I was like, I'd expect you not to do it. I expect you not to do it the way.
Freddie Haynes, no question. In fact, I talked to Jeremiah Wright a week ago after we finished Saturday. He texted me and said, call me. I called. So he was walking me through stuff. I mean, I'm just saying, look, Freddie Haynes, Jeremiah Wright, again, we don't want Karen Hunter and Greg Carr. We want Freddie Haynes. and of course, we see Octavia Butler's character, Laura Onyeka, arguing with her father, who's a minister. Like, what do we say every week? We ain't ministers. Come on. Hey, look, you got our brother, Freddie Haynes. What did he say? He gonna do it?
He said yes. So
yes.
Stay tuned. Yeah, no, but this is how we, connect the dots, build a bridge away from the colonized way in which we receive our spirituality, the way many of us hold on to it for dear life, like it is lifeblood itself, when it's really killing us. It is killing us the way that we are relating to God, the way they have taught us to relate to God, the way they have stripped us of our black magic, the thing that makes us connected to God, turning water into wine, raising the dead, moving a mountain from here to there. All of those things, we could do greater things that Jesus told us that than he did. Why aren't we doing it? Because you allow somebody to tell you that that's evil. You allow somebody to tell you that that's of the devil, when really that's the one thing that's going to probably free us all when we plug into it. And that's some of the stuff that we see in these books that Octavia Butler wrote.
A lot of it. And she talks about that. I mean, we'll talk a lot more about that Monday night, about how religion is often just basically, in fact, she has, one of Laura's brothers said that to him, religion is just so adults can get you to do what they say. I mean, and there is this Mother May I version of it. And we certainly see it in the contemporary world in the US with this white Christian nationalism. It's not Christian at all. I mean, if Reverend Haynes was with us right now, or Reverend Wright, they would be the first to say that's not Christianity. If David Walker said that, it's not Christianity. Mariah Stewart might say that. I mean, it's not Christianity. Harriet Tubman, who was a stone cold AME Zion, but she would say that ain't God.
Howard Thurman.
Howard Thurman for sure, no question. Martin Delaney, when he's got Henry Blake arguing with his mother-in-law and enslavement, we gonna pray. Say, yeah, I prayed. I still pray, but I gotta act now, and I'm gonna get you out of slavery too, you and your husband. And then he does it. I mean, it's bigger. And so, yeah, I mean, when we look at the violence we're having now, the John Henry Clark used to call Christianity and Islam male chauvinist murder cults. In fact, he said all these Western religions are male chauvinist murder cults. In fact, John Clark wrote the introduction to a book we'll talk about again just for a moment today in passing, when Haki and them put together in Third World Press and republished Negroes with Guns, Robert Williams. You know, this edition, which was published in 73, this edition, the introduction was written by John Henry Clark. And John Henry Clark said this. He said, man, John Clark, man, you know, I knew John Clark along with a whole lot of other people, but I spent intimate time listening to Clark because I wanted to be a teacher. And I knew that he was a master teacher. And of course, we all knew that. But, you know, when you're a teacher, you're a younger teacher, and you're spending time with a master teacher, you sit there and listen. You ask questions, and then you just sit there and listen. And Clark had a way of distilling things that people could say, well, you've overstated the case. Really? Prove me wrong. He writes in the preface to Negroes with Guns, Robert Williams, he says, my point here is this. European people within Europe and in the broader world outside of Europe have always maintained their power and control with a form of protracted violence. The humanity and naivete of African people seem to have always interfered with their understanding of this point. Now, that don't mean that Black people weren't violent, or other people weren't violent, but it does mean that the social structures and formations that we see coming out of Europe over the last 1,000 years, certainly the last 1,000 years, certainly the last 500, where we got pulled into this damn settler state practice that they messed up the whole Western Hemisphere with. And yes, they messed up the whole Western Hemisphere. Yes. And if you claim to be heir to that lineage, if you claim to be proud of it, critical of it, but ultimately proud of it, then you too are in the crosshairs. Why? Because you have a choice. You have a choice. You don't have to identify with that. But we're not talking about the violent way of knowing that animates songs like Onward Christian Soldiers marching as to war with the cross of Jesus going on before. We're talking about a different kind of spirituality. Again, Octavia Butler has her characters arguing about spirituality so that she can get to the point that we are the ones who put the shackles on each other. Don't blame that on God. Don't blame that on God. You understand? But anyway, the intimacy of violence that we experience now, whether it be these older heads in hip hop worried about drill music, whether it be Eric Adams, a cop who carried a weapon, who backs the blue, not uncritically, but still backs the blue itself being coming out of enslavement and the paterola tradition, and in terms of hierarchy, class hierarchy, suppressing the lower class at the behest of the owners in a capitalist society. You know, all of those things, all of those formations ultimately are shaped by a social structure, as John Clark says, that is born in and maintains its hierarchy through violence, sustained violence. Now, that doesn't mean that violence won't exist in any human social relation. Again, Octavia Butler bringing that up over and over again in her work. But we have to understand that whether it be, Uvalde, where you see the cop fails, of course the police fail. They're human beings. Well, yeah, they're humans, so we should cut them some slack. No, because y'all up in there, and one of the people who y'all kept out was the cop who's on the school district police force, who is the wife, who is the husband of one of the women that lost their lives in there, one of the teachers. You kept him out of the building too. He'd have gone in there. Why? Because that's his wife. Damn, this uniform should get me in there with my gun to try to end this violence. Yeah, no, you stay out here too. What the hell? Well, what good is this gun? I mean, the whole idea is, and people say, well, guns don't kill people. People kill people. That's exactly right. So taking guns won't change anything. What the hell are you talking about? Those two things are not co-equal. That's a non sequitur. You went from one thing to another thing. People kill people because of the field of violence these settler state formations where you have literally said, not only is it okay to kill people, we want you to kill people, just kill the right people. And then overlaid in that are cultural assumptions that say that certain people can never escape being killed. I mean, if you kill a monkey, you'll feel bad because the monkey's kind of entertaining. When you start giving little black boys monkey certificates for being entertaining when they 5 years old, that's the same little black boy you don't feel bad killing, because if the monkey turn around and you fear for your life, and you might fear for your life. Shout out to all you punk cops in Uvalde, because y'all fear for y'all lives. Y'all cowering in one room while the child calling 911 in the other room. So we know that you punks, but your punkishness is amplified by the fact that you're only human. Everybody should be scared, but you like to stand around with your hand stuck in your thumbs of your belt with all your weapons on it, just like you watch the cop shows and you stand with your police vest on like this, and this kind of effrontery of humanity. And somebody in Nubia, as I was scrolling just before we started, we asked what people are reading, what you're thinking about. Somebody dropped, of course, the great Gil Scott Heron, Stacey Ford dropped Gil Scott Heron, of course, his famous song Gun. Everybody got a pistol, everybody got a 45. The philosophy seems to be, sure as I can see, when other folks give up theirs, I'll give up mine. This is a violent civilization. In fact, Gil Scott Heron said, this is a violent civilization. If civilization is where I am. In other words, Gil said, it's a violent civilization. If civilization is what I am. Octavia Butler writing Parable of the Sower. And then those writing about Octavia Butler in the Parable series says that, when she's talking about the deterioration of civilization, understand the concept of civilization simply, among other things, is when individual human beings come together to build a consensus on what a society should look like. Well, what happens when you have a society where there's a radical inequality and there's a hierarchy, and the people at the top want to stay at the top? Well, they can't let those people at the bottom, which is most of the people, have a say in what the society looks like. And at the same time, if they go too far in the direction of oppressing and suppressing what those people have to say, those people will end up toppling the hierarchy. So you got to let them in just enough to manage. And of course, what she does in Parable of the Sower, we'll talk about this Monday night as well. And then we get into Parable of the Talents, of course. And this actually would be good to get Freddie, to get Reverend Dr. Haynes to talk about, because of course she takes the metaphor from that, the parable of, those the seeds that the three people get. And so the sower, the talents, the third one's supposed to be the trickster, which would have been interesting. Where you gonna go with that? But the idea is, it isn't just about the seeds that are being planted. It's about the soil in which they are being planted. A society, can you fix a society whose soil, not literally, although now literally global warming and so much, which we see make at the center of Parable of the Sower, but whose soil, whose conceptual foundation is rotten? What can flourish out of that? And so the field of violence is where we see the intimacy of human violence, person to person violence, which has always been with us, kind of given ground to flourish. So is that exclusive to whiteness? No, it isn't. In fact, I was thinking, let me see if I have, let me see. Here we go. I was reading, this is James McBride's novel, Deacon King Kong. And we know James McBride, the brother who wrote The Good Lord Bird, it was the John Brown thing. Then when they made into a movie, The Water is White. He did the James Brown book. I really like that one. In fact, that's the last time I saw him. I went to see him read from that, Kill 'Em and Leave. But let me read, this book came out in 2020, a couple years ago. He says, this is the beginning. This is the brother, Deacon King Kong, James McBride. He says, Deacon Cuffy Lambkin of Five Ends Baptist Church became a walking dead man on a cloudy September afternoon in 1969. That's the day the old deacon, known as Sport Coat to his friends, marched out to the plaza of the Causeway Housing Projects in South Brooklyn, stuck an ancient 38 Colt in the face of a 19-year-old drug dealer named Deems Clemens, and pulled the trigger. And that's intimate violence. right there. Remember that scene in New Jack City where the preacher shot Wesley Snipes in the chest? Idolatry. Again, why you shoot that man in the chest? Because Nino Brown has got all these drugs in the black community. This is black. And people say, see, black people kill each other. Look at all that black on black violence in Chicago. Hold on. Eric Adams is like that drill music in Chicago. Now it's in New York. We're going to ban drill music. Hold on. The old head hip hop people like, I get the sentiment, but you know, that's what y'all said about us. Yeah. And then the old heads say, yeah, but we wasn't. I mean, some of this stuff is off the chain, man. I mean, yeah, okay. But what is the ground in which this violence is being planted? Because remember the racialized element, the same thing where you would give a little 5-year-old boy a damn monkey certificate for being entertaining in Mississippi is the same thing that would drive you to say that I'm going to take a gun and shoot black people in Buffalo and write a whole manifesto about it. And my hero is the white boy that shot and killed 9 black people in Charleston, South Carolina, at Mother Emanuel Baptist Church, AME Church, African Methodist Episcopal Church. Yeah, okay. It said, well, what about this other thing that happened in Tulsa? That was black on black. Yeah, it was intimate. The man said his back hurt. It still hurts. So you shot this brother, you shot the white woman, you shot the receptionist, the other lady, you out here because you could get a gun. So, well, we got to go get these guns. Joe Biden shows up on Thursday night on TV and says, we're going to get these guns. This got to stop. Enough. And so therefore we need 60 votes. Hold on, bro. You still talking like this is a nation. It's not a nation. I understand why, because you're myth making. But the point I'm trying to make is this field of violence, this ground that is planted in is ground where the problem is the social structure. How the problem expresses itself is going to take the shape of whatever intimate connections or non-connections people are making. And in James McBride's case, he starts this novel with this old black man in Brooklyn shooting his drug dealer. He goes on and says, there were a lot of theories floating around the projects. It's the wild old sport coat, a wiry, laughing, brown-skinned man who had coughed, wheezed, hacked, guffawed, and drank his way through the cause houses for the good part of his 71 years. Shot the most ruthless drug dealer the projects had ever seen. He had no enemies. He had coached the project's baseball team for 14 years. His late wife, Hetty, had been the Christmas Club treasurer of the church. He was a peaceful man, beloved by all. So what happened? The morning after the shooting, the daily gathering of retired city workers, flophouse bombs, bored housewives, and ex-convicts who congregated in the middle of the projects at the park bench near the flagpole to sip free coffee and salute Old Glory as it was raised to the sky, had all kinds of theories about why Old Sports Coat did it. Sport Coat had pneumatic fever, declared Sister Veronica G., the president of the Cause Houses Tenant Association and the wife of the minister at Five Ends Baptist Church, where Sport Coat had served for 15 years. She told the gathering that Sport Coat was planning to preach his first ever sermon that upcoming Friends and Families Day at Five Ends Baptist, titled, quote, "Don't eat the dressing without confessing," end quote. Christianity. I love James McBride. In other words, you know, just because you go to church don't mean that you promote the full humanity of everyone at church. That's what Octavia Butler's main character, that's what Laura's arguing about with her daddy. She said, I got baptized, so it just, it was easier than not getting baptized. And I know y'all believe that shit. But by the time we get through the 15 chapters we're going to go through Monday night, we're going to see what happens to her family. We're going to see her on the road with a new family. Then of course, next week we'll see where they end up. But the point is this, just professing a faith doesn't mean that you are living up to this notion of life, community, these deeper values, which is why the old deacon that shot the drug dealer in the face was saying he killed the drug dealer was like Veronica Gee said he was going to preach his first sermon next Sunday. Don't eat the dressing without confessing. Anyway, I won't read too much more. I'll read one more paragraph because then she goes through then what McBride does is, as there's in the courtyard of the projects, he brings into this conversation is why the old man do what he do, a pan-African convening, because it's Brooklyn. Africans from all over the world, second, third generation immigrants, whatever. Now they all from Brooklyn. Where Brooklyn at? Well, technically in Holland, social structure. But the Brooklyn we talk about, what is Brooklyn to us? It is at one time the second largest city in the United States before they merged Greater New York. But more importantly, the whole damn Caribbean and Africa is Brooklyn. And all the Negroes that migrated from the South is all in Brooklyn. So he talks about all these different characters he's introducing. But I'm just going to read one from one of them. A couple of pages later, he says, but it was Dominique Lefleur, the Haitian cooking sensation, who lived in Sport Court's building, who best summed up everybody's feelings. Dominic had just returned from a 9-day visit to see his mother in Port-au-Prince, where he contracted and then passed around the usual strange third world virus that floored half his building, sending residents crapping and puking and avoiding him for days, though the virus never seemed to affect him. Dominic saw the whole stupid travesty through his bathroom window as he was shaving. He walked into his kitchen, sat down to eat lunch with his teenage daughter, who was quaking with a temperature of 103, and said, "I always knew old Sport Court would do one great thing in life." The whole point. So when you got a gun, that's an extension of you. Now, whether you are Spanish, shut up these Spanish kids after you shot your grandmother who used to work at the school. Whether you're a black dude because your back hurt and you shot up a black man, a white woman, these receptionists, whether you're a straight white nationalist who goes to Buffalo and slaughters people, and your heroes include a little white boy who's still alive, who his friends, and yes, you're his friends, you damn patter rollers, took to McDonald's after you killed all these black people in Charleston, South Carolina. Yes, you're his friends, because don't say you weren't his friends. You know what I'm saying? Just like some of y'all were the friends of that murderer in the elementary school. Why? Because you got parents, your knee and they back while they children getting slaughtered outside. You wouldn't even let the Latino cop whose Latino wife is in there trying to protect these little Spanish kids come in there, and he on your damn police force. So don't even try. In fact, the police chief, aren't you? Anyway, that blue got you blinded. But the point is that all of that is an extension of the people behind the uniforms, behind the weapons. James McBride, I just thought it was funny because James McBride in this fictional account called Deacon King Kong, and of course, that's just the opening of the novel. Then you go through all, who this guy is, and he's really about community. But it's also about violence. Because there are people who would cheer that. There are people who would support that. As I told y'all before, when Sonia Sotomayor came to Howard Law School shortly after she'd been sworn in to sit on the Supreme Court of the United States, and she said, when I was a prosecutor in New York, I like to get people on, either old black people or people from the Caribbean, because they would say, yeah, lock them up. This person terrorizing our community. And they wouldn't say it because they hated the person. They would say it because they thought they were doing the duty of black people, black and brown people. It's very important to understand it. So that field of violence, that social structure, we have to understand that there's a dimension of it that is who we are to other people, but there's social structure, but there's also a governance dimension. Who are we to each other? And that's where we bring in Robert Williams again. Now, we're not going to spend a lot of time with Robert Williams today because we know that Robert Williams, we talked about Robert Williams extensively, Negroes with Guns, Robert and Mabel Williams, who were over the Monroe branch of the NAACP. Robert Franklin Williams, right? There he is. Wanted by the FBI on the FBI's most wanted list. Robert Franklin Williams, born in Monroe, North Carolina, trained as a machinist in the National Youth Administration, attended West Virginia State College for Negroes. Shout out to the Hidden Figures again. And Johnson C. Smith University, North Carolina. Former member of the Monroe Unitarian Fellowship, churchman, Union County Human Relations Council, interracial cooperation, and a former president of the Union County branch of the NAACP. He was the first black leader of modern times to advocate armed self-defense on the part of black victims of racist violence. And now you got people, I got friends, it's Nubians, you talking to them, listening to them, who, going out, get gun permits, carrying the strap to the grocery store. They got children to protect. In other words, we don't know. I was out yesterday, downtown DC, and I'm standing there, just going to cross the street. The bus door open, and I heard this cat from the back of the bus. I'm outside the bus, talking to the bus driver. Open the door, back door, back door. Now, the front door open, but the back door wasn't open yet. Back door. In the moment, you know what I was thinking? Shit, where am I going to duck? See, this is the edge we're on now. You don't know who got the strap. You know what I'm saying? This man back hurt. So he went and took out the doctor. A brother who has spent his entire life in service. When you read his biography, like, man, you didn't just harm this brother. You took his life. You didn't just harm his family. You harmed this community in Tulsa. You understand? And so you know now. Somebody raised their voice. You don't know. This is what Robert Williams wrote in the prologue to Negroes with Guns. He says, "Why do I speak to you from exile?" He says, "Because a Negro community in the South took up guns in self-defense against racist violence and used them. I'm held responsible for this action, that for the first time in history, American Negroes have armed themselves as a group to defend their homes, their wives, their children, in a situation where law and order had broken down, where the authorities could not, or rather would not, enforce their duty to protect Americans from a lawless mob. I accept this responsibility, and I am proud of it. He said, I have asserted the right of Negroes to meet the violence of the Ku Klux Klan by armed self-defense and have acted on it. It has always been an accepted right of Americans, as the history of our Western states proves, that when the law is unable or unwilling to enforce order, the citizens can and must act in self-defense against lawless violence. I believe this right holds for Black Americans as well as whites. And we talked a lot about Robert Williams before. But you see what he said there? The history of Western states? Oh, man, where's my man? Here he is. I just got this. This book is 600 some pages, including the index. Gerald Horne's latest book just came out. The Counter-Revolution of 1836. Texas Slavery and Jim Crow and the Roots of U.S. Fascism. This book, what has Gerald done now? Now, you know the Counter-Revolution of 1776 takes us into the settler violence that Carr created the United States of America. But the Counter-Revolution of 1836, what Gerald does is establish firmly that Texas, shovel mouth, Texas, talking about the governor, right, of Texas right now. Texas is where you see the kind of cementing of this settler violence in a way different than the rest of all the rest of the states. And so when Robert Williams said, as the Western states show, that Wild West mentality, that mentality that's in Texas, that mentality that could be overrun if people would all register to vote. Why? Because Abbott and that cartoon character lieutenant governor he's got, I mean, it's like you put a blow-dried wig on a prune. I'm trying to understand. How you get there? First of all, I've never seen a white prune. Anyway, the point is that those cartoon characters are being elected with a fraction of the white nationalist party, which is a fraction of the electorate in Texas. And people simply have checked out. I'm not voting. You're not voting. And I'm so appreciative of the fact that we've not only had that conversation about Malcolm and the Ballot of the Book, but then you took it into those 3-hour-a-day blocks with that wider universe that you in, that global majority that had that conversation about the ballot or the bullet. Malcolm is helping us try to understand that we didn't create the violence, but we inhabit the violence fully. And that in many ways, politics is just another form of violence. Except, just like people say, I'm going to get me a gun. Well, you should get a ballot too. Why? The ballot is the political gun. Go read Fred Hampton. Understand that. When we talk about the Black Panthers, understand the logic that you don't leave any of your weapons at home if you're fighting a real fight. Now, if you just want to get slaughtered, you're going to get slaughtered in the ballot box soon. But anyway, I won't, because again, I just got this. It just came out. So I know what I'm going to be spending a great deal of time in the middle of the night in the next few days doing is reading this book. But this is what he says. Let me see if I can get a good phrase to let us understand here. He says, because I didn't mark anything yet. Even a mainstream Texas historian felt compelled to acknowledge that Washington, he often talks about countries by their capital. So he's talking about, Washington, D.C., of course, quote, never formally adopted the policy of massacre authorized, end quote, by Texas, where it was, quote, permissible to kill all males 12 years and older, end quote, by the 1850s, and where the vaunted Texas Rangers were little more than death squads of a type that came to characterize U.S. foreign policy by the mid-20th century. Conflict over Indian policy generated momentum for Texas's second secession, following the bolting from Mexico in 1836. Remember, Texas comes into existence when them white boys run out there and lop off the top third of Mexico and call themselves a country and call themselves Texians. And then they get in trouble, and then they bring in the United States, and then they teach the little school children, including probably that little child that got the monkey certificate, to remember the Alamo. Yeah, let's remember it. Not from the social structure, but the governance structure. Because them was people who had us enslaved in there that got killed by Santa Anna and the army. And if you get in your right mind, you wouldn't be cheering for Jim Bowie and Davy Crockett and them. But you know, we was growing up, they had us cheering for them. It took us a little while to understand we cheering for the wrong side. And if you think that's just ancient history, more people probably gonna know what happened between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard than are gonna watch the hearings for the January 6th commission when they come up. And if you remember, Johnny Depp played Tonto in The Lone Ranger. They keep making the same damn story. Gerald continues. He says, this time the conflict came with a secession from America itself in 1861. Texas entered the U.S. as the 28th state in 1845, this after existence as an independent republic, and part of the deal was control of its vast public lands, providing local authorities with more leeway in routing indigenous in comparison to other states. In other words, the rule in Texas was kill all the Indians. Gerald is like, even the United States didn't say kill all the Indians. Yeah, but Texas, murder is the case. Murder just wasn't the case that they gave me. Murder is the case that made me. Texas is about murder. The Texas Rangers are murderers. Go ahead.
Make them a gun, right? Do this with your hand and then flip it. Flip it. Does that look like the state of Texas?
Oh, it's Texas. The Panhandle show is. Wow. Wow. And all the stories about killing. Marty Robbins, out in the West Texas town of El Paso, I fell in love with a Mexican girl. You're a colonizer. And by the end of it, you shooting. Hell, y'all even pull Ray Charles into this, Willie Nelson. There were 7 Spanish angels in the altar of the sun. What y'all at shooting? Y'all always shooting somebody in Texas. Meanwhile, black people in Texas, what you trying to do in Texas? I'm just trying to rebuild my family. Really? Well, I heard that song and I like that. Play that song again. Okay, now we're going to take it from you. Yeah, but this ain't a song about killing. What song is that? There's a yellow rose in Texas. Yellow rose? Can you get yellow from white? No, but you can get it from black. That song wasn't about a black woman. You better go listen to the lyrics. That I am bound to see. She's the sweetest rose of color this soldier ever knew. Sweetest rose of color. Yeah. Play the banjo slowly. Wait, play the banjo? I'm going back to Georgia to find my Uncle Joe. Are these white people or black people? You talking about shooting people? No, I'm just trying to find my family, man. The Civil War is over. I just want to find my family. And them Negroes that fought their way into electoral strength in Texas that drove them white boys out of the Democratic Party into the Republican Party, which is now the white nationalist party, they didn't stop because they encountered temporary defeat. Let's just bring in Octavia Butler again. Monday night, we're going to get into this. The first lines she writes in Earthseed, the Books of the Living, the first lines, in other words, of the Parable of the Sower, by Lauren Oya, Olamina, Oya, Orisha, Oya, Oya, the water, Oya, the river, Oya. She says, prodigy this is when she's writing in 2024, right at the beginning, because this novel is set 2024, 2025, 2026, 2027. We're going to get to 2027 on Monday night. Then we'll continue. This, in other words, that's the decade we in, a couple of years from now, not even a couple of years from now. She writes and says, her protagonist, Lauren Olamina, prodigy is, at its essence, adaptability and persistent positive obsession. Without persistence, what remains is an enthusiasm of the moment. Without adaptability, what remains may be channeled into destructive fanaticism. Without positive obsession, there is nothing at all. Let's go back through that very quickly. Prodigy is at its prodigy. In other words, wow, this is Kids are prodigies. Kids are, this young person really knows how to do this. You can really drain the three-pointer. You know what I mean? You LeBron James, the first billionaire. How'd you get to be a billionaire? Playing ball. I'm a ball player, but I'm smart. I parlayed it into, yes, but the social structure, which thrives on absorbing violence in even its rituals, its cultural meaning making. What do you mean? Well, the violence of sports. Really? Yeah. I mean, all sports aren't violent. No, but look at the way certain sports are configured. Francis Cress Welsing used to talk about little white balls and big brown balls. Class plays a role. Class gives you access to the little white balls, golf, baseball, tennis, not a white ball, but you get the point. But your ticket out of the hood is the one that costs the least amount of money to play and it's got the most violence in it. Football. What the hell? I mean, ice hockey got, and then that's a little black puck too. Anyway, man, I'm not gonna get into that because some of y'all gonna say, "Oh, Francis Cress Welsing, that's that Hotep stuff." Don't you ever disrespect Francis Welsing until you go to medical school, until you do your residency, until you deal as a child psychiatrist for decades with young black children in DC, until you deal with their parents and help them come. And when you fix your mouth to say Hotep, but I know ain't nobody here gonna do that because y'all actually can read and write some Egyptian language now and know what Hotep means. People calling people Hoteps are usually some of the most ignorant people and also the people in pain. So I got a lot of room for the people in pain. But what y'all gonna stop doing is disrespecting your ancestors by using a word from the oldest language in human experience, reducing it to a pejorative. Anyway, but I'm not gonna go down the road of Francis Cress Welsing's metaphors, although I think she spent an entire lifetime earning her capacity to create these metaphors. And if her name was Sigmund Freud, you wouldn't blink twice. Anyway, prodigy is, at its essence, adaptability and persistent positive obsession. Well, think about artists. Think about anybody who does something so much that they just become incredibly great at it. And if it's the kind of thing the world wants to pay for to see, which with us usually involves violence. I mean, it's like, yeah, if you rapping about violence, you get paid. Do you think drill music would still be a huge thing if they weren't getting money? This is the whole connect. In other words, you want to hear that, just like you said, Prof. Play that. Y'all understand all that other stuff, but it's cool. Play that violent stuff, so I can say the N word. And if y'all get mad, it's in the song. It's in the song. Yeah. It's the same mentality had a white girl gave that little black boy the monkey certificate. I didn't know it was racist. No, you didn't. You didn't have to know because the whole thing is racist. So when you see him, you don't see your son. You see somebody else's monkey. So therefore, give him the monkey. I mean, he is a monkey, and he's very entertaining. But the point is that adaptability and persistent positive obsession, what she's saying there is what looks to be extreme genius isn't just talent, it's that you did this all the time. She wrote all the time. You played basketball all the time. You rapped all the time. Shout out to the Roots crew. The Roots picnic is today in Philly. Wish I could be there because Black Thought is one of my all-time favorites. Shit, I wish I could, I'd love to be there on the plateau listening to Black Thought and them. But when you do something all the time, you should get good at it. Right? But she says prodigy is at its essence adaptability and persistent positive obsession. Adaptability. They took all the musical instruments out the schools. No problem. I'm going to scratch up your records, Pop, but I'm going to use them on Mom's turntables. We're going to create something that everybody going to be singing, whatever we come up with. But you're adapting to your circumstances and you're practicing all the time. She says, next sentence, without persistence, what remains is an enthusiasm of the moment. So every generation, as Frantz Fanon says, out of relative obscurity must identify its mission, fulfill it, or betray it. But what gives that the momentum of force of power is the momentum of memory. If you don't remember what happened in the generations before you and apply those lessons to what you're doing now, you lose the momentum of memory. Individuals don't beat institutions. She's saying here, without persistence, what remains is an enthusiasm of the moment. One of the things we're creating in this space, and we're not the first to do it, but we are among the vanguard in this moment where technology enables us to do it. And a whole pandemic drove us inside long enough to allow us to repurpose our time by taking the choice away from us. And now that the choice to do other things is being restored, what we're seeing is what remains and what now is building is the realization that I don't want to walk away from that clean glass of water. In fact, I'm gonna get my friends, I'm gonna get my cousin, and I'm gonna get what it does to us, y'all, when we see children in here, when we see elders in here, when we see people commenting, because that's really what we want, is people connecting their memory to the momentum of what we do now. What she says in that second sentence, without persistence. In other words, this is not easy work because the noise is coming from all directions. The noise is coming from all directions. Without persistence, what remains is an enthusiasm of the moment. Joe Biden, enough. When is it going to stop? Joe. The people who got a piece of the story say, but didn't you sign on the crime bill? Okay, he did, yeah. But when's the last time that we talked about Amadou Diallo, Patrick Dorismond? I'm thinking about the New Yorkers. We ain't got, when is that? And then, people saying, well, black people killing black people. Yeah, but when enough became enough, you saw black people stop shooting each other. Do you remember 1992? Yeah. What happened in 1992? Rodney King verdict. Well, what's that got to do with anything? Remember the Crips and the Bloods called a truce? And the Mexicans, they all called a truce? And the streets of LA, they tied the blue and red rags together. You don't remember that? Well, these gangs kind of kill each other. Yeah, part of it is we don't have a momentum of memory. There are no good guys and bad guys. There's only us. That's what Octavia Butler. My point is that the choices we make direct what we do. And when you lose the momentum of the victories you've had in the past and the lessons you learned from the failures, we end up repeating mistakes and it just demoralizes us. Again, the second sentence, without persistence, what remains is an enthusiasm of the moment. Of course, you're going to be demoralized because you don't have to remember it. You don't even, how many people remember Robert Williams and what they did and the reaction to it? Next sentence, without adaptability, what remains may be channeled into destructive fanaticism. I read that and I think about the clash of ideologies. We just saw the California Reparations Commission, state legislature's Reparations Commission. And of course, shout out to leader Weber, Dr. Weber, Shirley Weber, for decades, professor of Africana Studies, San Diego State University, now the leader of the Democratic Party in the California State Legislature in the supermajority, which allows them to actually even put together a reparations study commission. The report, 500 pages. I have not read all of it. I've read most of it. And it's, in terms of structure, it's not different than previous statements of harm in terms of structure. By that, I mean, it's basically the first volume of the interim report. The next one I'm really looking forward to because that's when it's going to be where the rubber meets the road. That's the recommendations of what to do about it. The first one is basically the Litany of Abuses. And we've seen variations on the Litany of Abuses before. We charged genocide, 1951. Between 1951 and today, all of the reparations works that preceded it from the 19th century, the Litany of Abuses is there. This is one of the most kind of, let me not do it comparatively. Let me just say this. This is one of the longest compilations of Litany of Abuses. I'll say that charitably because you know me, I read the footnotes. And first of all, I just a couple of quick reactions. We ain't gonna talk about because all this happened since we saw each other last week. We all saw each other, and again, one of the things I love about this in-class space that we have is that it allows us. And Prof, you made this observation first. Really, it allows us to process some of what has happened in the intervening week, and of course, in Narrative and Nubia, we're building a much more kind of, I want to say it's no differently structured, but what it is, it's more of a guided and kind of collaborative space where we got more deliberate kind of practice. We don't have to do everything over here. This is kind of a front porch kind of thing. But what really struck me was that the interim report writers and editors were all either deputy attorney generals or it was one research program specialist, and the rest of them, and a press secretary in the state of California, the rest of them were deputy attorney generals. So the lawyers wrote and then, okay, well, let me look at the interim report supporting contributors. Law clerk, legal secretary, law clerk, deputy attorney general, deputy attorney general, deputy attorney general, deputy law clerk, legal secretary, law clerk. Not one person in the interim report writing contributors wasn't either a lawyer, law clerk, legal scholar, legal secretary, legal support. I said, what the hell? So now I know where this is going. The expert consultants, there were 4. 2 of them, Sandy Darity and Kirsten Mullen, are the ones who are shaping intellectual thrust of this California reparations study. And at that point, that's when I say, oh, I see why these footnotes look how they look. This is a report written by people who don't know anything about the reparations history of reparations movement, the conceptual arguments, discussions, consensus building that has been made in the reparations movement. And they're probably doing the best they can in good faith to construct this, but they're lawyers writing this, and they're being informed by a quartet of expert consultants, 2 of which have one of the most limited straitjacket concepts of reparations across the whole array of the reparations debate. Don't make them bad people, doesn't make them good people, but it's time to be smart. See, one of the reasons we have Narrative in Nubia is so that we can spend time in conversation with ourselves, not just our living selves, but our historical selves, and so that we can plan a better future and execute a better future by having the momentum of memory. So I'm reading through the report and I'm hearing people say, this is the most comprehensive. Don't do that. Because as my mama would say, you open your mouth, put your brain on display. All of us do it every time we open our mouths. You should just say, I don't know. You should say, I've never seen. But for people who know the long reparations movement, and I ain't just talking about the United States, I'm talking about globally, but I'm also talking in the United States. You understand that, okay, I'm reading this, and what was clear to me is y'all ain't solved the remedy phase. And everybody out there who was saying, yeah, they did. There's going to be documentation. In fact, if you read the executive summary, let me pull up the executive summary here just for a second, because the last on page 24, the executive summary, they've got this thing called the California African American Freedmen Affairs Agency. The recommendation to the legislature is to establish a cabinet-level secretary position over an African-American / Freedmen Affairs Agency tasked with implementing the recommendations of this task force. The role of the agency is to identify past harms, prevent future harm, work with other state agencies and branches, so forth and so on. Okay, slow this way down. There is enslavement, and there are the afterlives of enslavement, the impact, these 2 things together. That is a field of violence that we can safely kind of describe as harm. Okay. That harm did not begin in the Western Hemisphere. It begins in Africa at the behest of Europeans coming to Africa. Well, Africans sold Africans into slavery. That's right. Say it again. Africans sold Africans into slavery. Into what? Slavery. Okay, slavery. Where'd that come from? Well, everybody in the world has slavery. Okay, slow down. Your brain on display. Let's do a little brain surgery. What is slavery? I mean, everybody knows what slavery is. Okay, see, slow down. You gotta slow down. It takes time. Wait, what now? Wait, it takes time. What did Octavia Butler say? She say, prodigy is at its essence adaptability and persistent positive obsession. Oh, I didn't finish the last sentence. So you're going to be obsessed with this? Nobody should be obsessed about anything. Well, you're obsessed about whether the Warriors going to beat the Celtics or vice versa. You're obsessed about, who was right, Will Smith or Chris Rock. I mean, you're obsessed about them stealing the 2024 election and the Supreme Court decisions coming down the pike, and whether or not this is January 6th. Wait, you're not obsessed about that. You're obsessed about Megan Thee Stallion and her getting shot, and you should be obsessed about that because cats got guns. But more importantly, what made you shoot her? I mean, this is the thing behind this. What James McBride is getting into Deacon King Kong. I mean, what's the motivation behind it, right? So, I mean, you're upset. So it's not that you're not obsessed. It's just that you're obsessed about what you want to be obsessed about, and you even think that why you want to be obsessed about it was your idea. This is why we had to have a social structure category. Who are you to other people, and why do you think your obsessions are ones that you would have had it not been for the framework? Again, Parable of the Sower is going to help us think through that. But this last sentence that she writes, I think is more germane to what I'm about to debate. She says, without positive obsession, there is nothing at all. There are some things you should be obsessed with. And when it comes to reparations, you should be obsessed with knowing more about what that conversation is and what we should be thinking about and then acting on to get. So this California African American Freedmen Affairs Agency, I said, when I saw Freedmen Affairs, I said, oh shit, the poison that invaded the top echelons. And these lawyers that wrote it, who don't know nothing about it, who just trying to do the best they can, who have been lobbied and pushed, and then they got this little group of consultants who got their own narrow version of reparations, who have choked off the momentum of memory and therefore forestalled the possibility of breaking open this conversation. They done snuck this in here. Remember, the harm is enslavement and its afterlives, the impact. Guess who's impacted by enslavement? Everybody black. Well, them people weren't here. And of course, now that's why I'm looking for volume 2 of the preliminary report, because volume 2 is how they're going to propose solutions. And that's when it's going to fall apart. Oh, what did Black Thought say? Yeah, things fall apart when the center can't hold. And of course, he is quoting there, of course, Chinua Achebe, 1957 book Things Fall Apart, who is quoting the poet. I forget whether it's Eliot or is he the falconer, circling and circling, the bird circling, and then the falconer calls, and then the bird flies away because the center cannot hold. You know, he said, you know, things fall apart. I thought I told y'all. Black Thought trying to tell y'all. Black Thought, when I hear Black Thought, I hear somebody who is read, who is studying, who is perpetually in motion. You know what I'm saying? When I hear him, you know, when he say, when he said, what is it? Anyway, I'm just thinking about 215. Anyway, I could get into Black Thought. But anyway, the point is this. The Reparations Commission has narrowed the possibility of reparations. And when these white people show up with better records than you, there's going to be some show up that way. And you ain't got no records, or you got a broad concept. You say, I could trace my ancestors. Can you trace yours? And this commission can't help you. That's when the rubber's going to meet the road. But let me just go through this very quickly. What we're talking about is, and I'm not saying that to trash the California Reparations Commission at all. I'm not trashing it at all. I think it's better than no commission. I think it's a step forward. I think it's progress. But I also think that we have to be better. We have to be smarter, and that we have been better and smarter. And when we cut ourselves off from the momentum of memory, we lose the possibilities, because we understand that this violence we're dealing with, oh, gun violence got to stop. Yeah, gun violence is part of the field of violence, part of the ground of violence to again generate that metaphor that Octavia Butler uses in the Parables series. It is part of a larger field of violence, and what has to be dismantled is a social structure that engenders violence. Because as long as that's in place, this is the problem. Now, how does that relate? Let me tie it all together. Kind of bring it in for a moment. These wider valences of violence, we're focused on the local, the shootings. Buffalo, Tulsa, Uvalde, Buffalo, Tulsa, Uvalde. I mean, you name it. Someplace today since we've been here, because these shootings are going on every day. Well, you know, we're in month 3 now of the Russia-Ukraine war. Oh, yeah, we talked about that. It didn't stop because, again, as Octavia Butler says in her Framing Quake, if you don't remember, then that momentum gets lost. And we're not obsessed anymore with it. Because, you know, since then, a whole lot of stuff has happened. There's been the NBA playoffs. I mean, after all, my God. Biden is consumed with this war. Has to be. Why? Because what's at risk is this hierarchy that has been set up. We're not going to get into that today, but I'm going to mention it in the context of the jobs numbers. For example, people say, look at the job numbers. They say they're better. I mean, Biden, is he going to win and re-elect? Why are y'all looking at this local stuff as a local phenomenon? The gas prices are up. Yeah, do you know how companies work? In fact, the Financial Times Thursday, that same one where Elon Musk tell everybody to go back to work, Jamie Dimon on the front page of Financial Times, Jamie Dimon from Morgan Chase, JP Morgan Chase, saying there's a hurricane going to bear down on the global economy. What? There's a hurricane? What does that mean? Oh, we're about to be last sentence in the article. There were some bright clouds for the U.S., Diamond said, including healthy consumer spending, plentiful jobs, and rising wages. I lied. 2 sentences. Next sentence. The banking industry is in great shape, he added. What? Bruh, what you talking now? Meanwhile, not just the banking industry, the back of the first section of the Financial Times Thursday, Tula Oil / Capricorn. You know the drill. The Africa-focused exploration and production groups are combining in a near merger of equals that reflects their respective oil reserves. 2 of the big companies getting oil out of Africa just merged so they can make all the money in the world. The big read on Thursday, in fact, asked this question. Oh, come on, son. Where is it? Come on. Here we go. Because guess what Africa is doing? While they in there trying to suck all the oil out, here's the question. Can Africa grow without fossil fuels? Whoo, Jamie Dimon saying we making all the money, we good, but a hurricane is coming. Who you trying to scare, Jamie? What you worried about, Jamie? Oh, political instability. See, again, this reparations commission is cut the check. We got to no. There are three things at work. There's the politics in this situation. There is the kind of intellectual work or cultural piece in the situation, and then there's the legal framework. The reparations report written by lawyers. They're operating in a very narrow legal universe. What may be able to sustain court challenge? That's why they say, well, if we use lineage instead of race, we can't use race in California because y'all voted to take race out of any public policy making, which means you can organize and overvote that. I'm tired. I can't overvote it. Octavia Butler then told y'all fatigue is not an option. Positive obsession. You think them people in Texas, the first time they lost in court in the 1930s and 40s, the white primary defeated them. They said, I guess we just have to just take this L in Texas, in this murder capital of the Western Hemisphere. No! Your ass is able to play for the damn Houston Rockets and the San Antonio Spurs because the black people didn't give up. If that's the thing you're into. But the point is that the reason the lawyers wrote this framework that they have in this reparations thing is because they're being guided by the legal framework. That's different than a political framework. Politically, you can overwhelm that, which is why I'm looking at Darity and Mullen and them like, y'all, because you know, Sandy Darity is good, brother. I don't have any problems with Sandy Darity. You're not part of the reparations movement. You're an academic, and you're going to try to, you know, jump in the momentum of memory. And guess who else wasn't? These ADOS people, and now I know they done fractured in all these other acronyms and alphabet soup. This ain't coming for them either. I'm saying, I'm glad y'all here. After all, Octavia Butler tells us at the beginning of the parable of the sower, what without persistence, what remains is an enthusiasm of the moment. So you see people charged up now, like, yeah, the reparations was dead before we came, and the young people are in it now. And that, So what was before you? Nothing. You're putting your brain on display. Because without adaptability, in other words, without us listening to each other, in other words, without us getting that momentum of memory, in other words, without us having the arguments and debates, but deepening our understanding and then moving forward together, I tell you, brother, without adaptability, what remains may be channeled into destructive fanaticism. I testified at the commission, and them Negroes came for me in the chat like I couldn't even spell reparations. And I'm saying, this is forgive me, this is my personal flaw. See, the thing about ignorance to me, I find ignorance fascinating. The thing people get mad about, I'll be ready to laugh because I understand. And then I get very sad. Why? Because I know that that's coming from the pain. Y'all attacking me because you owed something. Guess what? You are absolutely owed something. And guess something else. When we read Parallel Story, we find that out. You ain't owed shit. Do you understand why Laura is challenging her father? If there's a God, why in the hell we out here fighting for water? And water more expensive than gas. And it's coming. She writes this book in the early 90s. By then, she's an established writer. She has broken through that poverty you see detailed in Linnell George's trip through the Octavia Butler archives. She's broken through because she's got this positive obsession. I mean, Octavia Butler, Prof. She whispered in your ear straight. This woman, she's obsessed from time she's a little girl. And it's all in her archive. I'm like, how the hell you save 9,000 items of anything in damn near 400 boxes? Linnell George, some kind of way, sat with that stuff for years and said, I'm going to pull this out. And what you see is from the time which is really on her mother and her grandmother. You got to shout out these black women, you know what I'm saying? And her family, her uncles and them. I mean, you see it in there. That's positive obsession. I ain't mad at ADOS, Foundation of Black Americans. You just got to work a little harder. Because otherwise, when you burn out, see, I knew Queen Mother Audley Moore. Queen Mother Moore was a long distance runner. You could have sat with Queen. If Queen Mother Moore was alive today, I wouldn't be talking crazy like this. Somebody would have put a laptop on her. We'd have her in Nubia, and she remind you, if you want to see oppression, she's a communist in the 30s and 40s. There are lessons to be learned. You know what I'm saying? And then she would tell y'all, okay, y'all got your report. Yeah. Here's what's going to happen next. Oh, yeah. And because you don't remember, when they punch you in your chest, your whole chest gonna cave in. And right by you. Go ahead, Prof. You gonna say something?
Somebody that actually literally sat in Harlem with Queen Mother Moore.
Yes, ma'am.
And I think about this positive obsession that you're talking about. There were I think 232 mass shootings in the United States this year. This year already. We heard about a handful on the heels of a leak of a possible overturning of Roe v. Wade, which was going to drive a lot of different people. I'm this is a little conspiracy theory. A lot of people are going to go to the polls in November because of that leaked possibility of Roe v. Wade being overturned because they were outraged. And then there were 232 mass shootings in this country. We didn't hear about any of them until recently.
That's right.
And then there is a whole ass war going on. I think Russia captured a whole another city within Ukraine. We don't hear about that. That was around the clock. Here's what I want to ask you, or let us posit: Are our obsessions being curated for us? And if so,
oh yes, of course.
If so, what's our response to having our obsessions curated? How do we break free from the media? I hate using these terms, but they literally tell us what we should be paying attention to.
That's right.
And so I'm grateful. Every time you open up that Financial Times, you got me with a subscription to it.
and you see,
thank you.
It's right there. But see, Prof, that's Haywood Carr. That's my daddy. That's my daddy who never got a chance to go to high school because they drafted him and four of his brothers and stuck their asses in World War II out of East Tennessee. But my daddy brought the newspaper home every day. And here's the game. From the time I was younger than that little boy, they get a monkey certificate too. The newspaper is a puzzle. Why is this story here? Why this story here? Put this in. So the people who report for the Financial Times, they're not writing for us to have this conversation today. And so our response has to be solve the puzzle because they telling you in your face what they doing. Jamie Dimon got more money than God, saying, I'm going to be fine. He said a hurricane is coming. Use your common sense. Who's in the hurricane? Well, Octavia Butler is telling you it's your black ass. But because he just said that the banks are fine. And then in the same paper, they talking about oil speculation. And they got a long article saying, can Africa develop by going green, by going to oil? And then you think to yourself, wait a minute, what do these things got to do with each other? What do you say? But people, we often consume things like it's just the story. No, the answer is yes, of course they're curating, and then we have to curate. I mean, it's right there for us. And so what we develop out of us curating, again, this is the value of all of our sessions, all of our time, every day with you on Sirius, every day wherever any of us are making this work, on the weekends within class, and then really in Nubian Narrative, where we have this now institutional base where everybody can come in. Bringing our bricks is us curating. Our bricks are ourselves. And so the answer to it is we build the world we want. This is the governance. We build on our common humanity. That's what Octavia Butler writes about over and over again. She even puts the words in the mouths of aliens so we can get past that. In fact, she talks about the fact that, oh wait, I should read this because again, people say, well, she's beyond race. And you know what? We could talk about what Octavia Butler has said, or we could just listen to Octavia Butler. I mean, it's not that hard. She said, let me see if I can find it quickly. No, this is the all white. Okay, here we go. She said, some writers have gotten around the need for research by setting their stories in distant egalitarian futures when cultural differences have dwindled and race has ceased to matter. Shout out to Star Trek. Octavia Butler said, I created a future like this in my novel Pattern Master, though I did not do it to avoid research. Ooh. Pattern Master takes place in a time when psionic ability is all that counts. People who have enough of that ability are on top, whether they're male or female, black, white, or brown. People who have none are slaves. In this culture, a black, like the novel's main woman character, would, except for her coloring, be indistinguishable from characteristics of any other race. Using this technique could get a writer accused of writing blacks as though they were whites in copper tone. And it could be a lazy writer's excuse for doing just that. But for someone who has a legitimate reason for using it, a story that requires it, it can be a perfectly valid technique. What she's writing about is hierarchy. And she never ran from being a black woman. In fact, she ran to being a black woman. You read through that archive, or at least that curation that Linnell George leads us through, and then you read what Octavia Butler wrote, or you listen to what she said in all the speeches that you can find, you see her always, her blackness is there. And that's why the introduction to the parable of the sower written by N.K. Jameson, another black woman in her 40s, who said, this is my third time reading it. In my 20s, I was at the Million Man March, registering voters. I was Black Power. And so it hit me one way. When I was in my 30s, I was in my graduate writers workshops and I was wrestling with it a little differently. Now I'm in my 40s. I see something very different now. She said, writers often go in threes. Twos, people don't recognize the pattern. 4, they get bored with it. 3 is about just right. It was the third time through. She said, nah, I'll write another introduction when I'm in my 50s and see what she says to me then. In other words, but that takes time. Cut the check. Be quiet. So, because what we're having curated for us looks quick. Tonight on the news, Ukraine. Okay, cut. Okay, 2 weeks from now. Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. You want it fast. It don't come fast. Because once you slow down, like any athlete will tell you, or musician, once you have mastered the rhythm, once you have mastered the craft, have you ever heard an athlete say, y'all, the game slowed down? Why did the game slow down? Because you mastered the craft. And now, to everybody watching, it's fast as hell, but to you, it's slow as hell. Pick and roll. Okay, I know the shooting at 3. Gotta go ahead and make this block. Okay, cut, then backdoor cut. No look pass. That wasn't a no look pass. I saw that cat running that way 0.2 seconds ago. But for you, it was no time. For me, it was like slow as hell. In other words, but that comes with mastery. That comes with, so to put that in very real time, in this week, in a few minutes, in fact, by the time many folks who are not yet in Nubian narrative and who are not in Nubia yet see this, hopefully Coco Gauff is running off with the French Open.
She lost.
Damn it! I ain't mad at her. Was it close?
No.
I ain't mad at her. I'm still not mad at her because that 18-year-old sounded like Arthur Ashe the other night. But in order for me to say that 18-year-old sounds like Arthur Ashe, I got to know who Arthur Ashe is and what Arthur Ashe did. And to know that Coco Gauff is not Arthur Ashe. This ain't the 60s. This ain't Davis Cup. This ain't Wimbledon. This ain't Tidy Whities and Stan Smith tennis shoes. But it's 2022, and what she says can go over the whole world while she's saying it. And you don't have to have closed circuit television, or you ain't got to wait for the replay, or you ain't got to wait for the newspaper the next morning, the Amsterdam News or the New York Times. Did he win? Did he lose? No, in that real moment, you just informed me, I'm sorry she lost. However, Coco Gauff, at 18 years old, this child knows she's playing a long game. Last week, when she won and she wrote on the camera, no guns, PC wrote, she writing on the camera. You know what she said? Coco Gauff said, I'm in Europe. Everybody's watching. I'm in the world. And I felt like that gave me a platform to say some things. Now, there's going to be some hillbillies. And God bless y'all. Because you know what Robert Williams would do with your ass. It's going to be some hillbillies that say, she's a traitor. She ain't in the United States and she's critiquing the United States. Here go your ancestor right here from Negroes with Guns. I just like reading it because it's so funny. Remember when they went to protect the black people in when the Klan was marching? And let me see if I can find it quick. I don't know, because I didn't mark it because I don't mark in these old books, because you know this is kind of a collector's item. Let me see. Yeah. One of my favorites. So these are your ancestors, those people who might jump on Coco Gauff because she was in Europe talking about y'all. No, I'm not gonna be able to find it. That's oh, this is after. Hold on. Militancy struggle for. Oh, this is the 2 little boys where the white girl went home and said they tried to kiss her, and then that set it off. You arrest the little boys. And oh man, I'm not gonna be able to find it. That's just too bad because it's one of my. If I just be quiet for 30 seconds, I will find it. But let me see. Do. Oh, that's okay. Yeah, that's okay. That's okay because the point I'm trying to make is remember when the white boy showed up and then the brothers showed up with here it is, here it is. Of course, you know it's gonna find it. All right, here we go. He says, the picket line continued. On Sunday, on our way to the swimming pool, because when they had the segregated pool, they're gonna integrate the pool, and then the Klan gonna defend the pool. On Sunday, on our way to the swimming pool, we had to pass through the same intersection, US 74 and US 601. There were about 2,000 or 3,000 people lined along the highway. 2 or 3 policemen were standing at the intersection directing traffic, and there were 2 policemen who had been following us from my home. Think about now the NRA met in Houston last week. Sylvester Turner's damn police chief. He said he's gonna be outside protesting. Dude, you the police chief. Them your patrollers standing there protecting these white boys in the auditorium from there. There was a crowd outside protesting, and inside they in there swearing their loyalty to death and violence. But you see, you got to be careful about that because again, these some of the same people that would call Coco Gauff, you're not American. Well, that ain't Coco Gauff. Coco Gauff is not really worried about that. I'm coming back to Coco in a minute. But she says the crowd started screaming. They said that an N-word had hit a white man. They were referring to me. They were screaming, kill the ends, pour gasoline on the ends, burn the ends. We were still sitting in the car. The man who was driving the stock car got out of the car with a baseball bat and started walking toward us. And he was saying, what did you hit me for? I didn't say anything to him. Remember Lester Maddox, Heart of Atlanta Motel, the Supreme Court case in Georgia where they want to integrate the restaurant and then integrate the hotel. And then the white boy showed up and Lester Maddox came and burst into the national imagination with that 2x4 he used to carry around. That's kind of stuff that in popular white culture, they had us as children saying we should be aspiring to walk around with a 2x4. Why? Because they had a white boy in Tennessee named Buford Pusser. They made a whole movie, Walking Tall. What you don't realize is that damn 2x4 is what they used against black people. So the white boy come up to Robert Williams with the 2x4. He continues and says, we were just looking there at him. He came up close to our car within an arm's length with the baseball bat. But I still hadn't said anything, and we didn't move in the car. What they didn't know that it was that we were armed. Under North Carolina state law, it is legal to carry firearms in your automobile so long as these firearms are not concealed. I had 2 pistols and a rifle in the car. When this fellow started to draw back his baseball bat, I put an Army 45 up in the window of the car and pointed it right into his face, and I didn't say a word. He looked at the pistol and he didn't say anything. He started backing away from the car. Somebody in the crowd fired a pistol and the people started again to scream hysterically, kill the N-words, pour gasoline on the N-words. The mob started to throw stones on top of my car. So I opened the door of the car and put one foot up on the ground and stood up in the door holding an Italian carbine. At this time, 3 policemen had been standing about 50 feet away from us while we kept waiting in the car for them to come and rescue us. When they saw that we were armed and the mob couldn't take us, 2 of the policemen started running. One ran straight to me and he grabbed me on the shoulder and said, surrender your weapon, surrender your weapon. I struck him in the face and knocked him back away from the car and put my carbine in his face. And I told him that we were not going to surrender to a mob. Now, if you don't think what's coming doesn't look closer to what I'm reading right now, you're not paying attention. You watching somebody curate for you. But you already know what I'm not talking about. Everybody's politically conscious. I'm not talking about everybody's organized. I'm not talking about the 2022 version of the Panthers. No, I'm talking about people who have had enough. The Crips and the Bloods were not politicized, but after that Rodney King verdict, they tied their rags together. That was yesterday. That was yesterday. That ain't even 100 years ago or 50 or 60 years ago. Continue. He says the other policeman who had run around the side of the car started to draw his revolver out of the holster. He was hoping to shoot me in the back. They didn't know that we had more than one gun. I love how Robert Williams tells this story. He says one of the students who was 17 years old, that is a year younger than Coco Gauff is now, put a 45 in the policeman's face and told him that if he pulled out his pistol, he would kill him. See, the brother who was on the police force involved, whose wife died in that school, who was stopped by his brother and sister officers, do you really think that if and when this happens again, that cop is not going to pull his gun out? That those parents aren't going to rush y'all? See, y'all not paying attention to how this works. But we're going to get into the parable of the sower next week and get a little clue. But let me finish with this. He says, the policeman started putting his gun back into the holster and backing away from the car, and he fell into the ditch. Final paragraph, he says, there was a very old man, an old white man out in the crowd, and he started screaming and crying like a baby. And he kept crying. And he said, trigger warning, children, put your fans over your ears because I want to read this straight. And he said, God damn, God damn, what is this goddamn country coming to? That the niggers have got guns. The niggers are armed and the police can't even arrest them. He kept crying and somebody led him away. Now that white man, all y'all in there thinking y'all is going to take these young cats out here making this drill music, y'all going to keep on. Now, I wanted to mention that in terms of Coco Gauff for this reason. Some of y'all going to call Coco, not y'all, none of us. Some people in social circles will call her un-American because she was out there and made that a point internationally. Coco Gauff said, this is my first election. Coco Gauff said, I'm 18 years old. They're not going to take my right to vote. And my daddy told, this is where I said, Arthur Ashe popped in my head the minute she said this, where her daddy told her. She said, my daddy told me I could change the world with this racket. I said, this child right here, no shade on LeBron James, Colin Kaepernick, I ain't mad. Coco Gauff, that's something Paul Robeson would have done. I'm gonna go oversee. You reparations people think, oh, we're foundational Black Americans. Do you know how silly and stupid that is in the context of the reparations movement? The minute you cut your nose off to spite your face, Joe Biden is obsessed with Ukraine right now. So guess who he sent to talk, Professor Hunter? Guess who he sent to negotiate what's about to start Monday in LA? Something called a summit of the meeting of the governments of the Western Hemisphere. It's the American states. This will be the first U.S. president since Obama went to the meeting in 2016. What does that mean? They don't want Cuba to go. They don't want Venezuela to go. So López Obrador in Mexico say, well, I may not come myself. I'll send it back. United States don't even hold that kind of weight no more. Do you understand? And now they worried about Colombia. Why? Because they got a president who they say is a far left president going to run for president of Colombia. He came in first in the elections last week. The vice presidential candidate on his ticket, a 40-year-old Black woman.
In Colombia?
Afro-Colombian. Brazil, number one population of Africans in the Western Hemisphere. United States, number two. But in Latin America, number two, Colombia. Afro-Colombians. In fact, I was just rereading an old piece called Slavery on the Spanish Frontier. The Colombian Choco, 1680 to 1810. They brought them Africans down there to mine with the Native American, the indigenous people. The sister's name, oh my God, we about to end. The sister's name, Francia Marquez. Francia Marquez. About 50 million people in Colombia. About 10% of them are Afro-Colombian. And their state in the western part, northwest. In fact, the major state for them is 90-some% African. It's the only state in Colombia that touches both the Pacific and the Atlantic. I mean, no, it's right up in the curve by the Mediterranean. It goes into the Caribbean Sea. So it's on both sides, like Costa Rica. And say it again.
And Panama.
And Panama. That's right. And Panama. That's exactly right. The reason I brought all that up, though, is just to help us understand none of us anywhere who have been oppressed have made significant progress in the modern world system by turning inward and cutting off the relationships to other people. This is why this whole Darity paradigm and this California stuff, I understand it's better than nothing, but that is a dead end. And guess who knows it? Everybody paying attention.
I was going to say, this is how, they cut us off from when the revolution happened. They didn't want, because the word spread, okay, this could happen everywhere. The goal is always to separate us from one another. That's why Dominicans walk around thinking that they're Spanish, and you're on the same place with Haiti, Hispaniola, but you're not like them. And Trujillo is always a divide and conquer. Why are we participating in it? And
Because
yeah, for
we don't
reparations,
remember. We don't
yes,
remember. But that's what we're doing right here. We're
yeah,
doing it right here. I mean, and we're not alone. But I must say, in conclusion for this morning, that the thing that gives me such great hope, the thing that has allowed me as just a person to reset, because summertime for us, we do our thing, we restore. Yeah, but this is the new normal. So not only is this the center going forward in the next months. Oh, by the way, the runoff, the United States does not want Marquez and her running mate to win. So the second place person that finished, nobody got 50%, is the Trump of Colombia. So now Joe Biden and them, US, are going to put all their weight behind stopping. It's already, you already see the New York Times. I'm reading the articles where you already see them trying to, this radical left, and it's a radical right too. But the radical left, the meeting of the Organization of American States is in LA starting Monday. Biden's going to be there. They putting pressure already. And then the papers there, in fact, it was in the, I like to read the white nationalist papers because, they have a stake. They're trying to start. Don't go every time. This was the paper, one of the papers of record of white supremacy, just naked white supremacy. This was yesterday's Washington Times. Hemisphere leaders snub Biden summit. They trying to make it look like these radical Latin American ideological solidarity tilts foreign influence closer to China. China? What China got to do with Brazil, and what China got to do with Venezuela? Well, you know what it's got to do with it? Guess who's coming in the Western Hemisphere funding roads and bridges and tunnels and that?
and they just try to bring their own NATO, China, and everyone's like, no, I'm not trying to be a part of it. So there's a lot of stuff happening.
Right. And we in here talking about Johnny Depp and Versus. We got to recurate. That's all I'm saying. Pay attention to the meeting of Organization of American States this week in Summit of the Americas in LA. And pay attention to this Sister Vasquez running in Colombia. Pay attention to how the United States deal with her. And if you don't think that has anything to do with what we're doing now, understand that client states is what props up those transfer of resources. Everything from supply chain to international finance. And you said, well, what's that got to do with me paying gas, paying the price I pay for gas? It's all in the newspapers. Stop going to CNN like that's going to help you understand what's going on. They making money hand over fist and passing on any deficits to you.
And rah when they have the panels on that, have black people that turn a phrase and are anyway, let me not do that.
No, you have to. No, it's important because some of that's ignorance.
We gotta focus.
Some of that's ignorance. I mean, and that's why again and it's hard for me too, Prof, because again, even with this reparations conversation, people are just so convinced that they're right. And that type of sureness either comes from deep study or you don't know nothing. And the society we're in, to the point that you raised earlier, this is a society of perpetual bombardment to prevent deep study. Because these are same people, again, just thinking about N.K. Jemisin. N.K. Jemisin, this is a woman who has won all the awards multiple times. Brilliant sister, who comes out of a family of artists. Her father was an accomplished artist. This is a woman who said, I was 20 years old. I was rah-rahs in the street, Black Power. N.K. Jemisin went to the Million Man March to register voters. I mean, she said, I read Parable of the Sower. I was like, yeah, man. Then again, I read it when I was right. I said, oh, yeah. Now I'm in my 40s. I read it again. I was like, damn. She said, now I'm going to read it again in my 50s. I'm going to rewrite it. In other words, if she's saying that, what the hell is all this? You know what you're talking about? It? Really? In all love, come on with us and spend some time. You know what I'm saying? You'll be ashamed of yourself.
And read those 15 chapters. I know it's like it's summer, it's the weather's nice and everything, but
that's time to do it.
We got to knock the dust up and the crust off of our minds.
No question. Oh, let me ask you this, Prof. Do you remember? You probably seen it since then, but when you were in school, getting a summer reading list.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know if they still do that in a lot of places because I just interviewed. In fact, let me show it to you because I showed it before, but I don't know if I showed this one. I just interviewed this lady, Dr. Natasha Wariku. She wrote a book called Race at the Top. This is the one about the Chinese and Indian and Korean students who were in this suburb, and they're at the top public high school, and they knocking it out the frame in terms of their grades. And so the white parents, all these are affluent people, they all got money. The white parents are complaining, and so the white parents protested. Some of them joined the school board so they could vote to stop giving out homework to the elementary school students, to make extracurricular activities and sports way more at school. And the Asian parents was like, what? So what the Asian parents do, they start enrolling their children in night school and weekend math school, and so they couldn't stop. And the white parents are complaining, and these are white parents whose children go to Princeton and Brown, but the Asian students are ripping them. And the reason I interviewed Natasha was, I said, because we know the affirmative action cases getting ready to come, they get ready to end affirmative action. She understands that diversity is accepted by elite white people when it enhances whiteness, but the value is to stay on top. That's why she calls it race at the top. You can't get to the top of a pyramid. Somebody got to be on the bottom. This is what Octavia Butler is saying. So you either build your own structure, which is what we're doing,
which is a circle.
A circle. We're not even building triangles. A circle. Everybody's in it. Or you understand that when you get to the top in a white supremacist system, the white people will change the rules. These Chinese parents told us grades. We got the grades. Now they want to talk about football and rugby and soccer and shit. One of the Chinese ladies told her, she said, you know what, sports is for exercise, not achievement. I mean, it was so crazy how to go. And so they just started ignoring it. Is fact. But I'm raising all that to say that, we have to be different. And we're doing it. We know how to do it. We know how to do it.
We invented the pyramid.
We built it. We did the science behind it. We built it, and we understand that pyramids serve a purpose. But we're not
a society on it.
No, we're not worshiping pyramids. What we are, however, is understanding that what we thought about that enabled us to do that is what we can now think about in a different context with the momentum of memory to build the type of society which will benefit not just us. But look, all them children that wanted to play hip hop, it'd have been better if the DJ had just put on our man Maurice White out of Memphis by way of Chicago, In the Stone. But Earth, Wind, and Fire tried to tell her it's in the stone. In other words, you're looking at the pyramid, but you need to look in the stone. In other words, it is the way of knowing. You don't need to build that pyramid in 2022. You got to build something for 2022 that uses what you used to build the pyramid and applied it to now. Gun violence is not going to stop in the United States of America. It is a gunfighter nation. It is a settler colony. You want to stop gun violence? The United States of America has to be remade or abandoned and structured into something else. But you could take all the guns. They'll get axe handles and 2x4s and baseball bats. You know what I'm saying? Because the violence is here.
That's right. In here.
Oh my God, in here for sure. All right. Well,
we're in here, and pyramids were built to preserve legacy and as an honor. Honorific. It was not, the thing upon which we tried to get to the top. It was the thing to honor and preserve. It wasn't a grain silo, but that's neither here nor there.
No. Yeah, I'm sorry, Ben.
Yeah.
All right, Ben.
See the Nubians on tomorrow with Dr. Sunyata Amen.
Yeah, I might try to get over there and see her.
And I got some catching up to do. I got to start rereading the 15th chapter. So when I get off this, that's what I'm gonna do for the rest of the day. I'm gonna be in community with Octavia Butler. So I appreciate you for that.
No, I appreciate you because listen, y'all, this was Professor Hunter's idea. And again, now we didn't start office hours with the intention of going this direction. It's being driven by us. So if you're not yet in the space, understand we're making this road by walking it to evoke the Latin American educator Paulo Freire. We make the road by walking, and we're walking together. And it's not just, if it were just studying, it would be enough. Because then when we take into our lives, but it's not just studying. We're building a whole thing. So I know we're getting ready to wind up, but I'm excited about this. A children's Nubia.
Yeah, it's coming.
Yeah. I'm looking now. I'm looking in the chat that people are not playing. Love y'all. Love y'all. Ah, look at the language.